How's everybody doing? Thanks so much for joining. And this will be the final debate between Trump and Biden. So we have a lot to talk about. So let's go ahead and do it. First things first is this is the first debate with a mute button. So I guess the over-under today is going to be how long Trump lasts before he just walks over to Joe Biden's podium and starts talking into his mic. I guess that seems to be the consensus of what's going to happen, because if Trump is actually able to keep his cool and keep quiet, I think that'll surprise everybody. So, but in the meantime, let's talk about some of the issues that we're going to hear about tonight. I expect the main thing we're going to hear about on the Republican side to be an insistence on talking about Hunter Biden and China. I think those are the issues that Trump is going to try his hardest to focus on. So let's go through those two. The first one is the Republican Party's insistence on making Hunter Biden the issue of this campaign, which just blows my mind. And it shows two things. One, it shows that for Trump, you know, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. They had an email scandal that worked in 2016, and they figure they can just rehash the same thing because they don't actually know how to use any other strategy. All they know is the thing that worked. And that, more broadly, that goes to, you know, the Trump campaign's inability to adapt any strategy when it comes to 2018, when it comes to 2020 versus 2016. They still villainize, anybody that doesn't look like their base. So, you know, what we're seeing now is just trying to reconcoct an email scandal and just kind of create a scandal where there is none. So, the irony of talking about nepotism here is this White House is a clinic in projection. Because if you want to talk about nepotism, all we have to do is talk about Don Jr. and Eric running the Trump Organization, selling $110 million in real estate, despite their promise of no new deals while their father was in office. If you want to talk about nepotism, how about Jared and Ivanka claiming that reporting that they've made $135 million in 2018 alone while they were working in the White House? If you want to talk about using your office for personal gain, consider the fact that the Turnberry Resort in Scotland, Trump's Turnberry Resort, he was rerouting soldiers to stay at his Turnberry Resort because it was failing. And then, lo and behold, after U.S. soldiers started getting rerouted to his Turnberry Resort, all of a sudden their profits went up $1.5 million. I mean, undoing the estate tax. Trump doubled the threshold that people would be able to take advantage of the estate tax, which only benefits the rich. I mean, this is every single issue we see is an issue where the Trump family has personally benefited from something in this White House. So if they really want to make Hunter Biden the issue of this campaign with 12 days to go, I mean, where do we even begin? We have so much that we can throw back at them that it just blows my mind. I mean, it's political malpractice, the fact that some advisor somewhere told him that this was a good idea. So in any case, going over to the issue of China, Trump's whole thing is that he wants to paint Joe Biden as being weak on China, that China's gonna eat our lunch. He says if Joe Biden becomes president, which is ironic because now 48 hours ago we found out that Trump has a secret bank account in China, and that from the years 2013 to 2015. Trump using a corporation's name so that he could hide it from his personal finances, using a corporation's name so he didn't have to disclose it in his financial disclosures, had paid $188,000 in taxes in China. And if you remember in 2016, the New York Times report shows that Trump paid $750 in taxes. In 2017, New York Times report shows that he paid $750 in taxes. And in the 10 out of 15 years prior to that, he paid nothing. So the fact is that Trump paid almost $250,000 in China, and during his first year in office, $750 in the United States. So if you want to tell me which of those two candidates sounds like they are owned by China, I'm all ears. So moving on, let's talk about Trump and Biden's records. So Trump is going to try and run on his record before the pandemic, right? That's what this White House is just so insistent on doing. They keep saying, everything was going. We had a gangbusters economy before the pandemic hit. We had low unemployment before the pandemic hit. Everything was going great before the pandemic hit. But here's the thing: you don't get to cherry pick the bad things that have happened during your administration out of that administration. I can't go to my insurance company and say, like, are you a good driver? Well, yeah, I'm a great driver, as long as you don't count that time I hit that guy with my car and killed him. You don't get to cherry pick the bad things that make you look bad. The pandemic occurred in this administration. Donald Trump was responsible for overseeing the response to it. And so now when we talk about records here, this counts. Moving on, the fact is that, if you want to talk about records, Trump's record speaks for itself. And his record in this pandemic is that we have 220,000 dead Americans. We have 8% unemployment. We have 11 million Americans out of a job. That is his record right now. So, you don't get to kind of live in this secondary fairy tale where everything stopped in February of 2020. What we have to deal with right now is that this is the reality of the situation. This is his record. He owns what has happened. Meanwhile, if you look at Joe Biden's record, that's an administration that oversaw 75 straight months of growth, and there were 2 pandemics in the midst of that. So, the Biden-Obama administration successfully oversaw the H1N1 pandemic, and they successfully oversaw the Ebola pandemic. So they had the exact same, maybe not the exact same, but they had trying circumstances as well, and they successfully got through it because they decided to listen to the science rather than digging their heads in the sand and pretending that anything unfavorable just didn't exist because there's an election coming up and we want to focus on the stock market. So another facet of Biden's record is that he and Barack Obama rescued the auto industry. These are all positive aspects of his record. And the fact is that, when you're looking back from where we are right now, in terms of jobs, which was the number one thing that Trump ran on for his presidency, he's the jobs president, right? Well, Trump is the first president since Herbert Hoover who will leave his tenure in office having lost jobs. He's down 4 million jobs. For comparison, Barack Obama gained 12 million jobs during his time in office. Bill Clinton gained 23 million jobs during his time in office. Even George W. Bush, I believe he gained between 1 and 2 million jobs during his time in office. George H.W. Bush was the same thing. So even those other paltry Republican administrations that somehow have tried to convince people that, they're jobs presidents as well, that the Republican Party is somehow, responsible stewards of our economy, even though when you look at the raw numbers, when you look at the raw numbers, they speak for themselves. But regardless, when you compare these two records side by side, what we see is that there's really no comparison between the two. Let's move over to the Supreme Court. Now, Biden announced he would look into a commission he announced today that he's going to look into a commission to give him ideas on reforming the court. And Trump is going to inevitably pounce on this as if Biden is trying to pack the court, right? That's going to be his number one thing. But I just want you to remember when Trump levies all of his attacks on Biden for packing the court, that the issue here is not the number 9. It's not the fact that we have 9 justices and the number 9 is sacrosanct. That is not the issue here. It's about what a 6-3 court represents. And what a 6-3 court represents is, hostility toward Roe v. Wade, which 70% of Americans support. It's hostility toward LGBT rights, Obergefell, which legalized gay marriage by the grace of 1 vote. It signifies hostility toward the ACA, which, in the 60th percentile of Americans support. And it signifies, hostility toward voting rights legislation and climate change legislation. Again, when Trump is going to inevitably attack Joe Biden for packing the court, it's not about keeping the number 9. It's not about protecting norms, because we know that Republicans do not give a shit about norms. They only care about doing whatever they need to tighten their grip on power. So, regardless of what they say, in terms of packing the court, the important thing to remember is what a 6-3 court represents. So right now I'm gonna go over. I think we've got Al Franken joining us. So let me switch over and see if we can get Al.
Brian?
Yes, Al. Can you hear me?
Yes, we had an adventure.
We made it happen. It's all right. Hey, everybody in the comments, let me know if you can hear me and Al all right. If everything looks and sounds good.
It looks fine. It looks good.
You look great.
So
Al.
I think you're talking about the court.
Yes, we're talking about the Supreme Court right now.
Okay.
And
yeah. Let me say a couple things about it.
I'd love to hear it.
Okay, I was there, of course, when Merrick Garland was nominated by President Obama. They said this was after Scalia died in early February, and they said, well, we're not going to take up Merrick Garland because the New Hampshire primary has already started, it's an election year.
Right, God forbid.
And of course now Justice Ginsburg died on September 18th, and boom, before anybody even had a chance to laud her, McConnell announced they're going to bring somebody up. This is so hypocritical. Of course, you saw Lindsey Graham and every other member of that committee say, we will not bring up somebody in 2020 if a vacancy comes open because it's an election year. And Lindsey said that, of course, famously saying, save the tape, save the video. And then he has said it again at the Atlantic Monthly Festival. That was after Kavanaugh. So this is just shameless power grab. Here's the thing. Yes, the 9 isn't necessarily a magical number. It's been there for a while. I think Biden should be saying, I'm going to be president for 4 years. If they overturn Roe, or effectively overturn it, which means that no one in Louisiana or Texas can get services, then I'll have no choice. And if they do the same with ACA, I'll have no choice. And what really bugged me about those hearings, I didn't hear Democrats. The Republicans would go like, Judge Coney Barrett, did you talk to the president about Roe v. Wade? Oh, no, I didn't. Well, of course you didn't. The Federalist Society nominated you. The Federalist Society, Leonard Leo, when Gorsuch was nominated, he said, there'll be no surprises. And what he meant was there's going to be no Justice Souter, right? And Justice Souter was nominated by George H.W. Bush, and he was a Republican from New Hampshire, turned out to be a progressive. And so when Trump pledged to only nominate people from a short list from the Federalist Society and the Heritage Foundation, and the important part of that is the Federalist Society. The Federalist Society, when he says no surprises, they know exactly who these people are, who they put on the list. And everyone they put on their list, it will overturn Roe v. Wade. And everyone they put on their list has this whole Federalist Society agenda. They're all 100%ers. Right. So someone should have just asked Coney Barrett, like, in your personal experience, has someone, instead of person A talking to person C, that sometimes person A can talk to person B and person B can talk to person C? Has that ever happened in your personal experience in life?
Yeah. And
so what is the shameless disingenuousness coming from my colleagues? And I was kind of very bugged by the fact that there weren't viral moments where our people pressed them.
Right, and the fact is that the the potential was there, right? Because this is a person who we know where she stands on all these issues that are wildly unpopular with the American people. She signed an ad saying that Roe was, that she wanted to overturn the brutality of Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade, barbaric.
She said it was barbaric.
Roe v. Wade is something.
Not only that, but that organization that she belonged to believes that discarding a fertilized egg from in vitro fertilization is the equivalent of abortion. And that group that she belonged to would criminalize that. Now, any woman who avails herself of in vitro fertilization, just by the nature of it, they create many fertilized eggs, because usually it's very rare that you get one that's viable. So by definition, she would eliminate in vitro fertilization. No one really pressed her on that. She lied. And I think we talked about this earlier when we did our test.
Everybody that's watching on YouTube that checked in, that came in last time during the Mary Trump thing can appreciate the fact that Al and I did a test this time, so we're good to go.
And actually, I was very proud of the fact that it was on my end.
That's right.
For the first time in my life.
I was proud of that.
On my end,
I was proud of that fact too.
With a millennial, I was on. But then, man, as soon as we tried to do this, so you know where I am. My daughter's babysitter apartment. I wore my mask.
Yeah. Hey,
her roommate let me in, and so that's where I am. Anyway, what were we talking about? Oh, the ADF, the Alliance Defending Freedom. Yes. Now, this in 2017, I questioned her because she had done speeches for them, paid speeches. They're a hate group. The Southern Poverty Law Center has labeled them a hate group. Why? Well, because they want to recriminalize homosexuality. They actually want to sterilize transgender people. They're a hate group. So I asked her about this then, and I went through all the stuff they want to do, and we talked about it. It's you can get it on YouTube. The thing is Pat Leahy asked her, did you know that the ADF was for recriminalizing homosexuality in this hearing in 2020?
This was this past week.
And she said, I did not know that. Now, you could say, okay, well, maybe she forgot this questioning. Well, first of all, she spoke to the group 5 times. Secondly, the CEO and president of the ADF was in the Rose Garden.
Yeah. Yeah.
She knows what they are. And so she was lying.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, at this point, it doesn't, for the Republican Party, it doesn't matter who they put forward. It doesn't matter, the intricacies of the process. None of that matters. Even today, they pushed her out of committee, despite the fact that they didn't have a quorum because no Democrats showed up, and they did it anyway. It's not about this. This is not about following process. It's not about having somebody who's even a decent person or who even resembles slightly what the will of the American people is. This is about pushing somebody forward who will.
I will not say she's not a decent person. She's an ideologue.
Right. Of course, I'm talking about her stance on these issues. She can be, and there's a reason that they tried to push her forward as like this family woman, and that's great. And I'm sure she loves her family, and I'm sure they're lovely. But the fact is that regardless, of her personal life, which I think holds very little bearing on what the American people care about, the issue is her stance on issues that impact the vast majority of the American people.
She has very, very extreme views. Very extreme.
She would be
views.
One of the most conservative members of the court.
I think she'd,
if not
the most. Yeah. Here's the thing: is like Merrick Garland was widely considered a moderate progressive, but not only that, he had been head of the D.C. Circuit. Okay, he'd been the head of it, the chief judge in the D.C. Circuit. He'd been on the D.C. Circuit for 19 years. As a chief judge, he was known as a consensus building chief judge. That's completely the opposite of this woman. And they cited this thing that they called the Biden rule. Do you remember
Yeah.
that in 2016? There's no such rule, but they were took a they cherry picked a little thing out of a speech he gave. But in that speech, because that was in '92 in June after the term had ended, and he said if a conservative resigns in order to be replaced by another conservative, if we're not consulted or a moderate isn't nominated, we won't take them up. If we're not consulted or a moderate, the Republicans were consulted on Merrick Garland, and he's a moderate.
And by the way, just to build upon that, you know who else agreed with that same rule that they pulled out of thin air? Amy Coney Barrett. She's on record agreeing with that exact same principle, which wasn't a real principle to begin with, but she agreed with it. And then of course when it's her time, when it's time for
She put that forward in an interview with CBS,
right.
is what you're saying. And she put together there were three parts to her thing. And the first part was exactly that argument that Kennedy was replacing Powell, who is a moderate, but also that he had been nominated in November. Several parts of this argument, but one was that it wasn't a lateral replacement. Right. In other words, that Scalia died, who was a staunch conservative, and he would be replaced by, presumably, by an Obama nominee who would be very different and would change the balance of the court. Well, look, this is Justice Ginsburg.
Yeah, right.
And going to Coney Barrett,
right.
as opposed to going to Merrick Garland.
Yeah.
So it's just so shameless, such shameless hypocrisy. So we got a debate coming up. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Let's do it. So
here's the thing I want to bring up just before. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but here's the one thing that really just has cracked me up. They say they've leaked or said a number of times that he's going to use self-deprecating humor.
This is Donald Trump, you say?
Yes, his team has said he's going to try self-deprecating humor. Now, this is something he has never done in his life.
Al, I feel like if anybody can talk about the intricacies of humor, you might be pretty well situated to be able to do that. So I guess my question would be, what are your thoughts on the potential for some Donald Trump self-deprecation coming up tonight?
There. Zero. I mean, he's never said a self-deprecating word in his life. Also, I've never seen the man laugh.
Yeah.
I've never seen the man laugh.
The closest we got was when that woman, I can't remember her name, but just during his town hall the other day, told him that he looked handsome when he smiles, and he just eked out a smile to appease her.
That's a smile. Yeah. A smile and a laugh are different things.
Closest thing we're gonna get.
Well, listen, I've seen him smile, yeah. And but the point is, I mean, he gets laughs from his audience a lot. He does, but they're never self-deprecating. Yeah. They're deprecating. There's a difference. There's an important part of self-deprecating, and that's you're deprecating yourself. And I've never seen the man do it, and that's the part I'm looking for him to try something he's never done in his life in the most important. Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know if this is the most important. Maybe the last one was.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, more broadly speaking, we can place whatever importance we want on this, but the fact of the matter is, the American people know who Donald Trump is. Him, making fun of his hair or whatever he has, like whatever his big, momentum swinging self-deprecating joke is going to be. The fact is that the American people know who this guy is. The American people know who Joe Biden is. It's reflected.
Well, that's the thing I'm most looking forward to, is the attempt at self-deprecating humor.
Yeah.
And then also just to see what there's going to be the attack on Hunter Biden. There's going to be, I don't know, China stuff. There's going to be.
I mean, here's the thing. This campaign. I mean, look. I'm not in the business of telling the Trump campaign how to run their campaign, but just objectively speaking, and I'm still moderately capable of doing that. Objectively speaking, I can't imagine any of the few percentage points of people who are still on the fence, the undecided people who they're actually speaking to tonight, are gonna get up off their couches and vote on the issue of Hunter Biden's emails, or vote on the issue of China. And even if
of Giuliani's turning
right,
over the Russian
I mean,
version
this is
of Hunter Biden's
it is
emails.
known disinformation. I mean, let's talk about this email thing just really quick. Just this is the 30-second summary of what this this scandal is for Joe Biden. It's that Rudy Giuliani apparently dropped off a laptop, or no, I'm sorry, that Hunter Biden apparently dropped off a laptop in Delaware while living in California to the computer shop of a Trump supporter, who then was positive that it was Hunter Biden, but the guy is also legally blind. And at the same time, nobody would touch this story except for the New York Post, and it was written by somebody who was brand new to the New York Post, because she just came from her previous job where she was Sean Hannity's producer, and the source for all of this information was Rudy Giuliani, who we know now from our own government was the target of a Russian disinformation campaign. Like, how is that all coming along, you know?
Well, we live in two universes of information. Yeah. And so that will not get to the other universe. Everything you just said is going to go to the universe that you speak to and I speak to, and that the people are actually in journalism speak to. But unfortunately, I wrote this book called Rush Limbaugh is a Big Fat Idiot and Other Observations back in 95. And there was a reason I wrote that. And it's the same reason that he got the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Trump, because without Rush, there's no Trump. And then I wrote a book called Lies and Lying Liars Who Tell Them a Fair and Balanced Look at the Right. And that was about Fox. And then since then, and I remember calling people liars. People say, you can't call people liars. I said, well, they're lying. So, but then since then, it's the internet, and it's Breitbart, and it's QAnon and Facebook. And so we live, unfortunately, now where 40% of Americans or something like that get completely the opposite information, and theirs is fake and false. And it's a very, very ugly thing. And only he would do. Oh, by the way, before we start this debate, one of the things I really am very concerned about is him stealing this election.
Yeah. Donald Trump, you mean? Okay,
yes.
So talk about that.
Well, the only way he's not going to steal this election is if he can't, which is why everyone has to vote. But there's a lot of ways to do it. And I think we need to keep our eyes wide open. And there's a lot of dates that are important. December 8th. I mean, when the safe haven for the electors. There's lots of mischief that state legislatures can do in, say, Pennsylvania. There's a lot of, he has referred himself to secret powers that actually do exist. And those are continuity of government powers that came to life during the Cold War or during the nuclear age. And he has the power to do a lot of stuff that I think Americans don't know about. And I'm going to be talking about those going forward. It's because we need eyes wide open. We don't want him doing something that we don't really understand what it is until it's too late.
And I would just say a few things about that. One is we have really good and really smart and a massive group of legal experts and lawyers that are working on this right now. I mean, the Biden team has come out and basically said that, this is, they put aside a certain amount of money, a mass influx of cash, basically, to have amassed one of the biggest legal teams or the biggest legal team that they've ever needed as we head into an election. And we have, really smart people. I know that you're close with Mark Elias, who is, this superstar lawyer who's been litigating a spate of wins across the country in terms of elections lawsuits, and he's been doing a great job. And it's not just him. There are I would venture to say hundreds of lawyers that they have on standby for this
But
exact issue.
it can get very hinky here, and he's got obviously the Justice Department in
Yeah.
Barr. He's and he does have some powers, and there is a lot of mischief that, and I'll be talking more about that on my
Yeah,
podcast. And
so Al,
yeah,
where can we find you? Because we're gonna head over to the
yeah.
debate shortly. So where can my viewers and where can they find you?
Well, a couple places. I have this podcast. It's called the Al Franken Podcast.
An eponymous podcast. That's right.
Eponymous, and most of my listeners know what eponymous means.
Because those listeners are what did you call them last? Highly educated and this is mostly for the advertisers. What we're doing right now, guys, is for the advertisers. Al Franken's listeners are highly
Yeah.
educated and
Affluent.
affluent. Yes. So
But that's not necessarily true. At least the
it's all
second.
right. No, just
Anyway,
as long as the
but
sponsors think that, then we're good to go.
yes, and then YouTube.
Al
I
Franken.
have a YouTube. Yeah, Al Franken. So if you know my name, if you can remember that, you can probably find me on both YouTube and on the pod.
And I've actually spoken to your producer. I know that you're getting deeper into video content now. So if you're not subscribed to Al's YouTube channel, head on over. Just hit the subscribe button.
I don't do as much. I don't do video like
No.
you, but I'm going.
He's yeah.
I'm getting. I admire what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Well, we're
Not a lot, but I do. No,
not as much as you'll admire your stuff when it eventually comes out, but
well, I'm not narcissist like some.
yeah. Well, no, we'll have plenty of that tonight.
Or
I'm
at
sure.
least certainly not a malignant narcissist.
Right. Just your run of the mill narcissist.
Well, I've got to go because I got to get out of this apartment that's in my apartment building and get up to my apartment to start. I got a live tweet during this.
Okay.
damn
Well,
thing,
Al,
so.
thank you so much for joining, and really,
I'm sorry I got here so
you're all
late.
good.
I really apologize.
What matters is that it worked out. So thank you again. Appreciate it, and we'll we'll hopefully talk to you
Let's
soon.
do this
That's
again.
right. All right. Thanks so
Okay,
much,
great.
Al.
Okay, man. Bye.
All right, so we are going to get we have a couple more minutes until this debate begins. So let's just talk about a couple things that I expect to see. Again, I think that the number one thing for those of you who have joined in the last little bit, I think something that we should expect to see as we head forward in this debate is Trump focus on these issues, these pet issues that he thinks are going to win him the election. Like, I guarantee we're going to hear about Hunter Biden. I guarantee that we're going to hear about China. When the issues that I guarantee that Joe Biden is going to speak about is the one and only issue that everybody's focused on right now, and that is the pandemic that's sweeping across this country. So, Trump will try to pretend that we've done as well as we could possibly do, but the fact is that we don't live in a vacuum, right? You can look. We have the luxury, so to speak, of being able to look at any other country in the world and see how they responded to this pandemic. And the fact is that we have 4% of the world's population and 20% of the world's cases. So those numbers speak for themselves. With regard to this pandemic. Also, Trump's record on this thing is we've got 220,000 deaths. We've got 1,000 Americans dying every single day. We've got 8% unemployment. We have 11 million Americans out of work. He's going to talk about, a V-shaped recovery. We lost 20 million jobs and we have only recovered 9 million. That's not a V-shaped recovery. That's a whatever a half V is. This is not, most of those jobs aren't going to come back that haven't recovered already. This has been an unmitigated failure no matter how you look at it. So with that said, let's see if we can bring the debate on. I know we have a couple of minutes, so as soon as we see the candidates take the stage, we'll move over to our regular, big screen coverage of the debate. But I do want to spend another moment or so before this thing starts. Let's see, we have about a minute or two left until the debate begins. I do want to spend that time talking about this pandemic, and that is that to put one more thing forward, and that is that no matter how Trump tries to cut it, when he claims that this is the best that he could have done, that there's no other way that anybody could have done a better job. All you have to do is look to other countries around the world. All you have to do is look to Canada, just our neighbor to the north, one country up. They have not even half of the death rate that we do, the fatality rate rather. You can look at countries like South Korea. You can look at Australia, Germany. Most other industrialized countries in the world saw this virus coming and took steps that are known to be effective, and they were able to be successful. They coordinated nationwide testing and contact tracing systems. They produced enough PPE, a capability that we had if Trump just invoked the Defense Production Act sooner. They went ahead and mandated the use of masks. They went ahead and advocated for stay-at-home orders or mandated stay-at-home orders. And I know that's not something that a president can do in this country, but he sure as hell could have advocated for it. He could have gone to the governors and said, this is something that we strongly advise the citizens to do. But he was so hell-bent on making sure that he pretended this thing wasn't going to, didn't exist, that it wasn't real, that it was just a figment of our imagination, that if he can just stave it off for as long as humanly possible so he can get to the election and he can keep his stock market intact, that he would be home free. And so we know that he knew the dangers of this virus. We know because of the Bob Woodward interview that he voluntarily sat down for, that he knew the transmissibility of this virus. We know that he knew the lethality of this virus. We know that he knew that it impacted young people as well as old people. And yet, when he came in front of the American people, he lied and said that it was going away with the heat, that it was contained, that cases were going back down to zero, that it would miraculously disappear. Anybody who wants a test can get a test. He lied straight to the American people's faces, and as a direct result of his response to this pandemic, we never got it contained. There is no straighter line for cause and effect than what you saw with regard to this pandemic. I mean, this is as cause and effect as it gets, right? This is the direct result of a president who opted to not take action, to not lead, and what came as a result of that was, an explosion of this pandemic across this country that now we can't get under control, and we're seeing that in what is a third wave of this virus, and still. Even amid the third wave of this virus, and the first two waves never disappear. This is still technically the first wave because we never got it under control. But the fact that even amid the third wave of this virus, what we're seeing is, denialism by Trump. Him taking off his mask when he was an actively infected COVID patient. When he went up onto the Truman balcony and took off his mask like some majestic hero while he was, wheezing through press conferences, it goes to show that he has no plan. And if you have no plan while you're running for re-election, this is him on his best behavior. This is his pitch to the American people. You think that it's going to get better when he's no longer accountable to the American people? If he were to win this election, you think that he's going to, hunker down and take the steps necessary to get this pandemic under control? Come on, give me a break. This guy, if he's not going to do it now, when this is the number one issue that the American people are facing, this is the number one issue that the American people are concerned about, and his response is to continue holding rallies, his response is to not wear a mask, his response is to continue attacking Governor Whitmer for the crime of being brave enough to mandate stay-at-home orders. That just goes to show that he's not gonna change his strategy. That this is who he is. He's okay with letting this virus rip through the country because he doesn't feel like doing any of the work necessary. That's why he keeps pushing for miracle cures. That's why he was pushing for hydroxychloroquine from the very beginning, injecting disinfectant. He wanted something that was done already, and that's why he's pushing for a vaccine now because it's something that he doesn't have to do. The scientists are working on it, and it allows him to just be home free. So the fact is that if he's in office, this virus will not get contained. This virus will not get under control, and the economy won't recover. Because the fact is that until and unless the virus is contained and under control, the economy won't recover. You might have, a decent percentage of people who will go back to normal, who will continue going to work, who might go to malls or stores or whatever it is. But if there's, a sizable portion of the population that thinks they're going to die if they go out into public, then that's going to have a real serious impact on getting back to normal. So I think we have the debate starting now. So let me switch over. Do we have audio on this debate? Okay.
Presidential debate between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. Tonight's debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. It is conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Commission's health security advisor. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent. No cheers, boos, or other interruptions, except right now, as we welcome to the stage former Vice President Joe Biden and President Donald J. Trump. And I do want to say a very good evening to both of you. This debate will cover 6 major topics. At the beginning of each section, each candidate will have 2 minutes uninterrupted to answer my first question. The debate commission will then turn on their microphone only when it is their turn to answer, and the commission will turn it off exactly when the 2 minutes have expired. After that, both microphones will remain on, but on behalf of the voters, I'm going to ask you to please speak one at a time. The goal is for you to hear each other and for the American people to hear every word of what you both have to say. And so with that, if you're ready, let's start. And we will begin with the fight against the coronavirus. President Trump, the first question is for you. The country is heading into a dangerous new phase. More than 40,000 Americans are in the hospital tonight with COVID, including record numbers here in Tennessee. And since the two of you last shared a stage, 16,000 Americans have died from COVID. So please be specific. How would you lead the country during this next stage of the coronavirus crisis? 2 minutes, uninterrupted.
So, as you know, 2.2 million people modeled out were expected to die. We closed up the greatest economy in the world in order to fight this horrible disease that came from China. It's a worldwide pandemic. It's all over the world. You see the spikes in Europe and many other places right now. If you notice, the mortality rate is down 85%. The excess mortality rate is way down and much lower than almost any other country. And we're fighting it, and we're fighting it hard. There is a spike. There was a spike in Florida, and it's now gone. There was a very big spike in Texas. It's now gone. There was a very big spike in Arizona. It's now gone. And there are some spikes and surges in other places. They will soon be gone. We have a vaccine that's coming. It's ready. It's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered. We have Operation Warp Speed, which is the military is going to distribute the vaccine. I can tell you from personal experience that I was in the hospital. I had it, and I got better. And I will tell you that I had something that they gave me, a therapeutic, I guess they would call it. Some people could say it was a cure. But I was in for a short period of time, and I got better very fast, or I wouldn't be here tonight. And now they say I'm immune. Whether it's 4 months or a lifetime, nobody's been able to say that, but I'm immune. More and more people are getting better. We have a problem that's a worldwide problem. This is a worldwide problem. But I've been congratulated by the heads of many countries on what we've been able to do. If you take a look at what we've done in terms of goggles and masks and gowns and everything else, and in particular ventilators, we're now making ventilators all over the world, thousands and thousands a month, distributing them all over the world. It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away.
Okay, former Vice President Biden, to you, how would you lead the country out of this crisis? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
220,000 Americans dead. If you hear nothing else I say tonight, hear this. Anyone who's responsible for not taking control, in fact, not saying I take no responsibility initially. Anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America. We're in a situation where there are 1,000 deaths a day now, 1,000 deaths a day. And there are over 70,000 new cases per day. Compared to what's going on in Europe, as the New England Medical Journal said, they're starting from a very low rate. We're starting from a very high rate. The expectation is we'll have another 200,000 Americans dead between now and the end of the year. If we just wore these masks, the president's own advisors have told him, we could save 100,000 lives. And we're in a circumstance where the president thus far and still has no plan, no comprehensive plan. What I would do is make sure we have everyone encouraged to wear a mask all the time. I would make sure we move in the direction of rapid testing, investing in rapid testing. I would make sure that we set up national standards as to how to open up schools and open up businesses so they can be safe and give them the wherewithal, the financial resources to be able to do that. We're in a situation now where the New England Medical Journal, one of the most serious journals in the whole world, said for the first time ever that the way this president has responded to this crisis has been absolutely tragic. And so, folks, I will take care of this. I will end this. I will make sure we have a plan.
President Trump, I'd like to follow up with you and your comments. You talked about taking a therapeutic. I assume you're referencing Regeneron. You also said a vaccine will be coming within weeks.
Yes.
Is that a guarantee?
No, it's not a guarantee, but it will be by the end of the year. But I think it has a good chance. There are two companies, I think, within a matter of weeks, and it will be distributed very quickly.
Can you tell us which companies?
Johnson & Johnson is doing very well. Moderna is doing very well. Pfizer is doing very well. And we have numerous others. Then we also have others that we're working on very closely with other countries, in particular Europe.
Let me follow up with you, and because this is new information, you have said a vaccine is coming soon, within weeks now. Your own officials say it could take well into 2021 at the earliest for enough Americans to get vaccinated. And even then, they say the country will be wearing masks and distancing into 2022. Is your timeline realistic?
No, I think my timeline is going to be more accurate. I don't know that they're counting on the military the way I do, but we have our generals lined up, one in particular, that's the head of logistics. And this is a very easy distribution for him. He's ready to go as soon as we have the vaccine. And we expect to have 100 million vials. As soon as we have the vaccine, he's ready to go.
Vice President Biden, your reaction, and just 40% of Americans say they would definitely agree to take a coronavirus vaccine if it was approved by the government. What steps would you take to give Americans confidence in a vaccine if it were approved?
Make sure it's totally transparent. Have the scientists of the world see it, know it, look at it, go through all the processes. And by the way, this is the same fellow who told you this is going to end by Easter last time. This is the same fellow who told you that, don't worry, we're going to end this by the summer. We're about to go into a dark winter. And he has no clear plan, and there's no prospect that there's going to be a vaccine available for the majority of the American people before the middle of next year.
President Trump, your reaction, he says you have no plan.
I don't think we're going to have a dark winter at all. We're opening up our country. We've learned and studied and understand the disease, which we didn't at the beginning. When I closed and banned China from coming in heavily infected, and then ultimately Europe, but China was in January. Months later, he was saying I was xenophobic. I did it too soon. Now he's saying, oh, I should have, moved quicker.
40,000 people still came into the country during the China ban.
Many months behind me. And frankly, he ran the H1N1 swine flu, and it was a total disaster, far less lethal, but it was a total disaster.
12,000 people died. We have 220,000.
Numbers, 700,000 people would be dead right now, but it was a far less lethal disease. Look, his own person who ran that for him, who, as you know, was his chief of staff, said it was catastrophic, it was horrible, we didn't know what we were doing. Now he comes up and he tells us how to do this. Also, everything that he said about the way every single move that he said we should make, that's what we've done. We've done all of it. But he was way behind us.
Vice President Biden, your response.
My response is he is xenophobic, but not because he shut down access from China. And he did it late after 40 countries had already done that. In addition to that, what he did, he made sure that we had 44 people that were in there in China trying to get to Wuhan to determine what exactly the source was. What did the president say in January? He said, no, he said, he's being transparent. The president of China is being transparent. We owe him a debt of gratitude. We have to thank him. And then what happened was we started talking about using the Defense Act to make sure we go out and get whatever is needed out there to protect people. And again, I go back to this. He had nothing. He did virtually nothing. And then he gets out of the hospital and he talks about, don't worry, it's all going to be over soon. Come on. There's not another serious scientist in the world who thinks it's going to be over soon.
President Trump, your reaction?
I say over soon. I say we're learning to live with it. We have no choice. We can't lock ourselves up in a basement like Joe does. He has the ability to lock himself up. I don't know. He's obviously made a lot of money someplace, but he has this thing about living in a basement. People can't do that. By the way, I, as the president, couldn't do that. I'd love to put myself in the basement or in a beautiful room in the White House and go
We'd love to put him in a basement
until it disappears. I can't do that. And Kirsten, every meeting I had, and I'd meet a lot of families, including Gold Star families and military families, every meeting I had, and I had to meet them. I had to. It would be horrible to have canceled everything. I said, this is dangerous. And you catch it. And, I caught it. I learned a lot. Great doctors, great hospitals. And now I recovered. 99.9 of young people recover. 99% of people recover. We have to recover. We can't close up our nation. We have to open our school, and we can't close up our nation, or you're not going to have a nation.
And of course, the CDC has said young people can get sick with COVID-19 and can pass it. Vice President Biden, I want to talk broadly about strategy, though.
Can I respond to that?
30 seconds, please, and then I have a question.
No, number one. He says that we're learning to live with it. People are learning to die with it. You folks home will have an empty chair at the kitchen table this morning. That man or wife going to bed tonight and reaching over to try to touch their, out of habit, where their wife or husband was, is gone. Learning to live with it. Come on. We're dying with it because he has never said, you said it's dangerous. When's the last time? Is it really dangerous still? Are we dangerous? You tell the people it's dangerous now? What should they do about the danger? And you say, I take no responsibility.
Let me talk about your two.
Excuse me, I take full responsibility. It's not my fault that he came here. It's China's fault. And you know what? It's not Joe's fault that he came here either.
The response is his fault.
They kept it from going into the rest of China for the most part, but they didn't keep it from coming out to the world, including Europe and ourselves.
Vice President Biden.
The fact is that when we knew it was coming, when it hit, what happened? What did the president say? He said, don't worry, it's going to go away. Be gone by Easter. Don't worry, the warm weather. Don't worry, maybe inject bleach. He said he was kidding when he said that, but a lot of people thought it was serious. A whole range of things the president has said. Even today, he thinks we are in control. We're about to lose 200,000 more people.
President Trump.
Bingo.
Look, perhaps just to finish this, I was kidding on that, but just to finish this, when I closed, he said I shouldn't have closed. And that went on for months. Nancy Pelosi said the same thing. She was dancing on the streets in Chinatown in San Francisco. But when I closed, he said, this is a terrible thing, you're xenophobic. I think he called me racist even, and because I was closing it to China. Now he says I should have closed it earlier. It just, Joe, it doesn't work.
I didn't say either of those things.
You certainly did. You certainly did.
I talked about his xenophobia in a different context. It wasn't about closing the border to Chinese coming to the United States.
All right, I want to talk about both of your different strategies to handling
He thought
this.
I shouldn't have closed the border.
Well,
that's obvious.
Do you want to respond to that quickly, Vice President
No.
Biden? Okay. Let's talk about your different strategies toward dealing with this. Mr. Vice President, you suggested you would support new shutdowns if scientists recommended it. What do you say to Americans who are fearful that the cost of shutdowns, the impact on the economy, the higher rates of hunger, depression, domestic and substance abuse outweighs the risk of exposure to the virus?
What I would say is I'm going to shut down the virus, not the country. It's his ineptitude that caused the country to have to shut down in large part. Why businesses have gone under, why schools are closed, why so many people have lost their living, and why they're concerned. Those other concerns are real. That's why he should have been, instead of in a sand trap in his golf course, he should have been negotiating with Nancy Pelosi and the rest of the Democrats and Republicans about what to do about the acts they were passing for billions of dollars to make sure people had the capacity.
But you haven't ruled out more shutdowns.
Well, no, I'm not shutting down the neighbor, but there are, look, you need standards. The standard is if you have a reproduction rate in a community that's above a certain level, everybody says, slow up, more social distancing, do not open bars and do not open gymnasiums, do not open until you get this under control, under more control. But when you do open, give the people the capacity to be able to open and have the capacity to do it safely. For example, schools. Schools, they need a lot of money to open. They need to deal with ventilation systems. They need to deal with smaller classes, more teachers, more pods. And he's refused to support that money, or at least up to now.
Let's talk about schools. President Trump,
I think we have to respond, if I might.
Please, and then I have a follow-up.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. Look, all he does is talk about shutdowns, but forget about him. His Democrat governors, Cuomo in New York, you look at what's going on in California, you look at Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Democrats all, they're shut down so tight, and they're dying. They're dying. And he supports all these people. All he talks about is shutdowns. No, we're not going to shut down, and we have to open our schools. And it's like, as an example, I have a young son. He also tested positive. By the time I spoke to the doctor the second time, he was fine. It just went away. Young people, I guess it's their immune system.
Let me follow up with you, President Trump. You've demanded schools open in person and insist they can do it safely. But just yesterday, Boston became the latest city to move its public school system entirely online after a coronavirus spike. What is your message to parents who worry that sending their children to school will endanger not only their kids, but also their teachers and families?
I want to open the schools. The transmittal rate to the teachers is very small, but I want to open the schools. We have to open our country. We're not going to have a country. You can't do this. We can't keep this country closed. This is a massive country with a massive economy. People are losing their jobs. They're committing suicide. There's depression, alcohol, drugs at a level that nobody's ever seen before. There's abuse, tremendous abuse. We have to open our country. You know, I've said it often. The cure cannot be worse than the problem itself. And that's what's happening. And he wants to close down. He'll close down the country if one person in our massive bureaucracy says we should close it down.
Vice President Biden, your response.
Simply not true. We ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We ought to be able to safely open, but would they need resources to open? You need to be able to, for example, if you're going to open a business, have social distancing within the business. You need to have, if you have a restaurant, you need to have plexiglass dividers so people cannot infect one another. You need to be in a position where you can take testing rapidly and know whether a person is in fact infected. You need to be able to trace. You need to be able to provide all the resources that are needed to do this. And that is not inconsistent with saying that we're going to make sure that we can open safely. And by the way, all you teachers out there, not that many of you are going to die, so don't worry about it. Come on.
President Trump, let me follow up with you quickly.
By the way, I will say this. If you go and look at what's happened to New York, it's a ghost town. It's a ghost town. And when you talk about plexiglass, these are restaurants that are dying. These are businesses with no money. Putting a
You know who's dying is people.
expensive. And it's not the answer. I mean, you're going to sit there in a cubicle wrapped around with plastic.
Yeah, because there's a pandemic that you didn't get under control.
You can't do that to people. You just can't. Take a look at New York and what's happened to my wonderful city for so many years. I loved it. It was vibrant. It's dying. Everyone's leaving New York.
Take a look at what New York has done in terms of turning the curve down in terms of the number of people dying. And I don't look at this in terms of the way he does. Blue states and red states. They're all the United States. And look at the states that are having such a spike in the coronavirus. They're the red states. They're the states in the Midwest. They're the states in the upper Midwest. That's where the spike is occurring significantly. But they're all Americans. They're all Americans. And what we have to do is say, wear these masks, number one. Make sure we get the help that the businesses need that has money's already been passed to do that. It's been out there since the beginning of the summer, and nothing's happened.
President, New York has lost more than 40,000 people, 11,000 people in nursing homes.
President Trump, what
when
about...
you say spike, take a look at what's happening in Pennsylvania, where they've had it closed. Take a look at what's happening with your friend in Michigan, where her husband's the only one allowed to do anything. It's been like a prison. Now, it was just ruled unconstitutional. Take a look at North Carolina. They're having spikes, and they've been closed, and they're getting killed financially. We can't let that happen, Joe. You can't let that happen. We have to open up. And we understand the disease. We have to protect our seniors. We have to protect our elderly. We have to protect especially our seniors with heart problems and diabetes problems. And we will protect them. We have the best testing in the world.
The guy couldn't even protect himself.
Let me follow up with you before we move on to our next section. President Trump, this week you called Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's best-known infectious disease expert, quote, a disaster. You described him and other medical experts as, quote, idiots. If you're not listening to them, who are you listening to as you fight this?
I'm listening to all of them, including Anthony. I get along very well with Anthony. But he did say, don't wear masks. He did say, as you know, this is not going to be a problem.
In February.
But that's okay. He said, this is not going to be a problem. We are not going to have a problem at all. When Joe says that, I said, Anthony Fauci said, and others, and many others, and I'm not knocking him a lot. Nobody knew. Look, nobody knew what this thing was. Nobody knew where it was coming from, what it was. We've learned a lot. But Anthony said, don't wear masks. Now he wants to wear masks. Anthony also said, if you look back, exact words, here's his exact words. This is no problem. This is going to go away soon. So he's allowed to make mistakes. He happens to be a good person.
Vice President Biden, your response quickly, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
My response is that think about what the president knew in January and didn't tell the American people.
That's it.
He was told this was a serious virus that spread in the air, and it was much worse than the flu. He went on record and said to one of your colleagues, recorded, that in fact he knew how dangerous it was, but he didn't want to tell us. He didn't want to tell us because he didn't want us to panic. He didn't want us, Americans don't panic. He panicked. But guess what? In the meantime, we find out in the New York Times the other day that, in fact, his folks went to Wall Street and said this is a really dangerous thing, and a memo out of that meeting, not from his administration, but from some of the brokers, said sell short because we got to get moving. It's a dangerous problem.
Well, this is
I'm going to give you 30 seconds to respond, and then we're going to move on.
The Wall Street one, I don't know. Somebody went to Wall Street. You're the one that takes all the money from Wall Street. I don't take it. You have raised a lot of money, tremendous amounts of money. And every time you raise money, deals are made, Joe. I could raise so much more money. As president and as somebody that knows most of those people, I could call the heads of Wall Street, the heads of every company in America. I would blow away every record, but I don't want to do that because it puts me in a bad position. And then you bring up Wall Street. You shouldn't be bringing up Wall Street because you're the one that takes the money from Wall Street, not me. I could blow away your records that, like you wouldn't believe. We don't need money. We have plenty.
What do you think Biden's average donation is?
Hillary Clinton with a tiny fraction of the money that she was able to.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to move on.
Don't tell me about Wall Street.
Average contribution, $43.
All right, we're going to move on to our next section, which is national security. And I do want to start with the security of our elections and some breaking news from overnight. Just last night, top intelligence officials confirmed again that both Russia and Iran are working to influence this election. Both countries have obtained U.S. voter registration information, these officials say, and Iran sent intimidating messages to Florida voters. This question goes to you, Mr. Vice President. What would you do to put an end to this threat? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
I made it clear, and I ask everyone else to take the pledge. I made it clear that any country, no matter who it is, that interferes in American elections will pay a price. They will pay a price. And it's been overwhelmingly clear this election, I won't even get into the last one, this election, that Russia has been involved, China has been involved to some degree, and now we learn that Iran is involved. They will pay a price if I'm elected. They're interfering with American sovereignty. That's what's going on right now. They're interfering with American sovereignty. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think the president said anything to Putin about it. I don't think he's talking to them a lot. I don't think he said a word. I don't know why he hadn't said a word to Putin about it. And I don't know what he has recently said, if anything, to the Iranians. My guess is he'd probably be more outspoken with regard to the Iranians. But the point is this, folks. We are in a situation where we have foreign countries trying to interfere in the outcome of our election. His own national security advisor told him that what is happening with his buddy well, I won't, I shouldn't, well, I will. His buddy, Rudy Giuliani, he's being used as a Russian pawn. He's being fed information that is Russian, that is not true. And then what happens? Nothing happens. And then you find out that everything that's going on here about Russia is wanting to make sure that I do not get elected the next president of the United States because they know I know them and they know me. I don't understand why this president is unwilling to take on Putin when he's actually paying bounties to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan.
I think we all know why.
And activities that are trying to destabilize all of NATO. I don't know why he doesn't do it, but it's worth asking the question. Why isn't that being done? Any country that interferes with us will, in fact, pay a price because they're affecting our sovereignty.
President Trump, same question to you. Let me ask the question. You're going to have 2 minutes to respond. For 2 elections in a row now, there has been substantial interference from foreign adversaries. What would you do in your next term to put an end to this? 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Well, let me respond to the first part as
Here we go.
Joe answered. Joe got $3.5 million from Russia, and it came through Putin because he was very friendly with the former mayor of Moscow, and it was the mayor of Moscow's wife. And you got $3.5 million. Your family got $3.5 million, and you know, someday you're going to have to explain why did you get 3.5. I never got any money from Russia. I don't get money from Russia. Now, about your thing last night, I knew all about that, and through John Ratcliffe, who is fantastic, DNI, he said the one thing that's common to both of them, they both want you to lose, because there has been nobody tougher to Russia. Between the sanctions, nobody tougher than me on Russia. Between the sanctions, between all of what I've done with NATO, you know, I've got the NATO countries to put up an extra $130 billion, going to $420 billion a year. That's to guard against Russia. I sold, while he was selling pillows and sheets, I sold tank busters to Ukraine. There has been nobody tougher on Russia than Donald Trump. And
Did Joe Biden work at a pillows and sheets store?
The submarine port, you remember that very well. During your term, during you and Barack Obama, they took over a big part of what should have been Ukraine. You handed it to them, but you were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are. But now, with what came out today, it's even worse. All of the emails, the horrible emails of the kind of money that you were raking in, you and your family. And
Here
Joe,
it is.
you were vice president when some of this was happening, and it should have never happened. And I think you owe an explanation to the American people. Why is it? Somebody just had a news conference a little while ago who was essentially supposed to work with you and your family, but what he said was damning. And regardless of me, I think you have to clean it up and talk to the American people. Maybe you can do it right now.
Vice President Biden, you may respond.
What a joke.
And then I do want to follow up on the election security.
I have not taken a penny from any foreign source ever in my life. We
There it
learned
is. Easy
this
as that.
president paid 50 times the tax in China, has a secret bank account with China, does business
set himself up
in
for
China,
this.
and in fact is talking about me taking money. I have not taken a single penny from any country whatsoever, ever. Number one. Number two, this is a president, I have released all of my tax returns, 22 years. Go look at them. 22 years of my tax return. You have not released a single solitary year of your tax return. What are you hiding? Why are
There
you
it is.
unwilling? The foreign countries are paying you a lot. Russia's paying you a lot. China's paying you a lot. And your hotels and all your businesses all around the country, all around
Damn.
the world. And China's building a new road to a new a golf course you have overseas. So what's going on here? Why don't release your tax return or stop talking about corruption?
President Trump, your response.
First of all, I called my accountants under audit. I'm going to release them as soon as we can. I want to do it, and it'll show how successful, how great this company is. But much more importantly than that, people were saying $750. I asked them a week ago, I said, what did I pay? They said, sir, you prepaid tens of millions of dollars. I prepaid my tax. Tens over the last number of years. Tens of millions of dollars I prepaid because at some point they think it's an estimate. They think I may have to pay tax. So I already prepaid it. Nobody told me that.
Did your accountant
Nobody
tell you
told
when
you
you
that.
could release
Excuse
them?
me. And it wasn't written whenever they write this. They keep talking about $750, which I think is a filing fee. But let me just tell you, I prepaid millions and millions of dollars in taxes. Number one. Number two, I don't make money from China. You do. I don't make money from Ukraine. You do. I don't make
Not
money
me,
from
you.
Russia.
You're the puppet. You're the puppet.
You made $3.5 million, Joe, and your son gave you. They even have a statement that we have to give 10% to the big man. You're the big man, I think. I don't know. Maybe you're not, but you're the big man, I think. Your son said we have to give 10% to the big man. Joe, what's that all about? It's terrible.
All right, gentlemen, I want to ask you both some questions about all of this, but I'm going to let you both respond very quickly. You just said you spoke to your accountant about potentially releasing your taxes. Did he tell you when you can release them? Do you have a deadline
2 weeks.
for when you're going to release them?
I get treated
Audit.
worse than the Tea Party got treated. Because I have a lot of people in there, deep down in the IRS, they treat me horribly. We made a deal, it was all settled until I decide to run for president. I get treated very badly by the IRS, very unfairly. But we had a deal all done. As soon as we're completed with the deal, I want to release it. But I have paid millions and millions of dollars, and it's worse than paying. I paid in advance. It's called prepaying your taxes. I paid in advance.
I want to ask you both about questions regarding your potential foreign entanglements and questions that have been raised to give you both a chance to talk about this more broadly. Respond very quickly, and then I'll get to my question.
Why did he's been saying this for 4 years?
Yeah.
Show us. Just show us. Stop playing around. You've been saying for 4 years you're going to release your taxes. Nobody knows it, Mr. President. What they do know is you're not paying your taxes, or you're paying taxes that are so low.
That's it.
When last time he said what he paid, he said, I only pay that little because I'm smart. I know how to game the system. Come on. Come on, folks.
So
it is.
President Trump, and then I want to get to 2 questions to both of you on this.
I was put through a phony witch hunt for 3 years. It started before I even got elected. They spied on my campaign. No president should ever have to go through what I went through. Let me just say this.
And they
Mueller and 18 angry Democrats and FBI agents all over the place spent $48 million. They went through everything I had, including my tax returns, and they found absolutely no collusion and nothing wrong. $48 million. I guarantee you, if I spent $1 million on you, Joe, I could find plenty wrong. Because the kind of things that you've done and the kind of monies that your family has taken, I mean, your brother made money in Iraq. Millions of dollars. Your other brother made a fortune, and it's all through you, Joe. And they say you get some of it, and you do live very well. You have houses all over the place. You live very well.
All right, gentlemen, let me just ask some questions about all of this broadly. Vice President Biden, there have been questions about the work your son has done in China and for a Ukrainian energy company when you were vice president. In retrospect, was anything about those relationships inappropriate or unethical?
Nothing was unethical. Here's what the deal. With regard to Ukraine, we had this whole question about whether or not, because he was on the board, I later learned of a Burisma, a company, that somehow I had done something wrong. Yet every single solitary person, when he was going through his impeachment, testifying under oath who worked for him, said, I did my job impeccably. I carried out U.S. policy. Not one single solitary thing was out of line. Not a single thing, number one. Number two, the guy who got in trouble in Ukraine was this guy trying to bribe the Ukrainian government to say something negative about me, which they would not do and did not do because it never, ever, ever happened. My son has not made money in terms of this thing about, what are you talking about, China. I have not had, the only guy made money from China is this guy. He's the only one. Nobody else has made money from China.
President Trump, let me ask my question to you.
But could I just one thing?
If he didn't make money from China, why would he pay $188,000 in taxes?
He's no longer in the military service. I won't get into that. And he didn't have a job. As soon as he became vice president, Burisma, not the best reputation in the world. I hear they paid him $183,000 a month. Listen to this. $183, and they gave him a $3 million upfront payment.
All right.
And he had no energy
I'm going to let the Vice President respond to that quickly, and then I need to get
dishonest.
to a question to you. Very
No
quickly,
basis for that. Everybody investigated that. No one said anything he did was wrong in Ukraine.
Okay, President Trump, this is for you. Since you took office, you've never divested from your business. You've personally promoted your properties abroad. A report this week, which was referenced, does indicate that your company has a bank account in China. So how can voters know that you don't have any foreign conflicts of interest?
I have many bank accounts, and they're all listed, and they're all over the place. I mean, I was a businessman doing business. The bank account you're referring to, which is, everybody knows about it, it's listed. The bank account was in 2013. That's what it was. It was opened it was closed in 2015, I believe. And then I decided, because I was thinking about doing a deal in China like millions of other people. I was thinking about it, and I decided I'm not going to do it. Didn't like it. I decided not to do it. Had an account open, and I closed it.
Okay.
Excuse me. And then, unlike him, where he's vice president and he does business, I then decided to run for president after that. That was before. So I closed it before I even ran for president, let alone became president. Big difference. He is the vice president of the United States, and his son, his brother, and his other brother are getting rich. They're like a vacuum cleaner. They're sucking up money every
President Trump,
place he
thank you.
goes.
We do
Not
need to
true.
move on. I do want to ask you, Vice President Biden, about China. Let's talk about China more broadly. Of course, President Trump has said that they should pay for not being fully transparent in regards to the coronavirus. If you were president, would you make China pay? And please be specific. What would that look like?
What I'd make China do is play by the international rules, not like he has done. He has caused the deficit of China to go up, not down, with China, up, not down. We are making sure that in order to do business in China, you have to give all your intellectual property. You have to have a partner in China. It's 51%. We would not do that at all, number one. Number two, we're in a situation where China would have to play by the rules internationally as well. When I met with Xi, when I was still vice president, he said we're setting up air identification zones in the South China Sea. You can't fly through them. I said we're going to fly through them. We just flew B-52, B-1 bombers through it. We're not going to pay attention. They have to play by the rules. And what's he do? He embraces guys like the thugs like in North Korea and the Chinese president and Putin and others, and he pokes his finger in the eye of all of our friends, all of our allies. We make up we're 25% of the world's economy. We need to be having the rest of our friends with us saying to China, these are the rules. You play by them or you're going to pay the price for not paying by them economically. That's the way I will run it, and that's what we did in upholding steel tariffs and a range of other things when we were president and vice president.
All right, let's talk about North Korea.
Excuse me, no, I have to respond to that.
Okay, very quickly, and then
My
we're
son
going to move on
walked
to
out
North
with $1.5
Korea.
billion from China to
Not
manage after
true.
spending 10 minutes in office and being in Air Force Two, number one. Number two, there's a very strong email talking about your family wanting to make $10 million a year for introductions.
President Trump, on China policy, though, what
No, but wait a
specifically are
minute.
you going to do? What specifically are you going to do to make China pay? You've said you're going
First
to
of
make
all,
them pay.
China is paying. They're paying billions and billions of dollars. I just gave
New
$28 billion.
sanctions? New sanctions?
I just gave $28 billion to our farmers. because
Taxpayers'
China,
money.
Yeah, that's our money.
Taxpayers' money didn't
No,
come
no,
from
yeah,
China.
you know, the
That's how tariffs
taxpayers,
work.
It's called China. China paid
true.
$28 billion, and you know what they did to pay it, Joe? They devalued their currency, and they also paid up. And you know who got the money? Our farmers, our great farmers, because they were targeted. You never charged them anything. Also, I charged them 25% on dumped steel because they were killing our steel industry. We were not going to have a steel industry.
Okay.
And now we have a steel
Okay,
industry.
Vice President Biden, your response, please.
Our response is, look, this isn't about, there's a reason why he's bringing up all this malarkey. There's a reason for it. He doesn't want to talk about the substantive issues. It's not about his family and my family. It's about your family. And your family's hurting badly. If you're making if you're a middle-class family, you're getting hurt badly right now. You're sitting at the kitchen table this morning deciding, well, we can't get new tires, they're bald because we have to wait another month or so. Or are we going to be able to pay the mortgage? Or who's going to tell her she can't go back to community college? They're the decisions you're making in the middle-class families like I grew up in Scranton and Claymont. They're in trouble. We should be talking about your families, but that's the last thing he wants to talk about.
I want
That is a
to talk
typical
about
statement.
North Korea.
Excuse me, just
I do
for
want
1
to turn
second,
to
please.
10 seconds, Mr. President.
That's
10
a
seconds.
typical political statement. Let's get off this China thing, and then he looks, the family, around the table, everything. Just a typical politician when I see that.
Let's talk about
I'm not
North
a typical
Korea now.
politician.
Okay,
That's why I
President
got
Trump.
elected.
Let's
get off the subject of China. Let's talk around sitting around the table.
All right.
Come on, Joe, you can do better.
We're going to talk about North Korea now. President Trump, you've met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un 3 times. You've talked about your beautiful letters with him. You've touted the fact that there hasn't been a war or a long-range missile test. And yet North Korea recently rolled out its biggest ever intercontinental ballistic missile and continues to develop its nuclear arsenal. Do you see that as a betrayal of the relationship you forged? Just 30 seconds here because we need to get on to the next
So
segment.
when I met with Barack Obama, we sat in the White House right at the beginning, had a great conversation. It was supposed to be 15 minutes, and it was well over an hour. He said the biggest problem we have with North Korea. He indicated we will be in a war with North Korea. Guess what? It would be a nuclear war, and he does have plenty of nuclear capability. In the meantime, I have a very good relationship with him. Different kind of a guy, but he probably thinks the same thing about me. We have a different kind of a relationship. We have a very good relationship, and there's no war. And you know, about 2 months ago, he broke into a certain area. They said, oh, there's going to be trouble. I said, no, they're not, because he's not going to do that. And I was right. Look, instead of being in a war where millions of people, Seoul, you know, is 25 miles away, millions and millions, 32 million people in Seoul, millions of people would be dead right now.
President
we
Trump,
don't have
that's
a war,
30
and
seconds.
I have a good
Thank
relationship.
you. Vice President Biden, to you. North Korea conducted 4 nuclear tests under the Obama administration. Why do you think you would be able to rein in this persistent threat?
Because I'd make it clear, which we were making clear to China, they had to be part of the deal. Because here's I made it clear, and as a spokesperson of the administration when I went to China, that they said, why are you moving your missile defense up so close? Why are you moving more forces here? Why are you continuing to do military maneuvers with South Korea? I said, because North Korea is a problem, and we're going to continue to do it so we can control them. We're going to make sure we can control them and make sure they cannot hurt us. And so if you want to do something about it, step up and help. If not, it's going to continue. What has he done? He's legitimized North Korea. He's talked about his good buddy who's a thug, and he talks about how we're better off. And they have much more capable missiles, able to reach U.S. territory much more easily than ever did before.
Let me follow up with you, Vice President Biden. You've said you wouldn't meet with Kim Jong-un without preconditions. Are there any conditions under which you would meet with him?
On the condition that he would agree that he would be drawing down his nuclear capacity to get that the Korean Peninsula should be a nuclear-free zone.
All right, let's move on to American families.
Kristen, they tried
Very
to
quickly,
meet with
10
him.
seconds,
They
President.
tried to meet with him. He wouldn't do it. He didn't like Obama. He didn't like him. He wouldn't do it.
Okay, I
know
gotta
for
give him a
fact they
chance to
tried.
respond to that
He
before we
wouldn't
move
do
on.
it.
You
And
know,
that's okay. You know what? North Korea, we're not in a war. We have a good relationship. You know, people don't understand. Having a good
President
relationship
Trump,
with
we have
leaders
to
of
move
other
on, 'cause
countries
we have
is
a lot
a
of
good thing.
We have a lot of questions to get
Yes,
to.
not
That's
Your
like
response.
saying we had a good relationship with Hitler before he, in fact, invaded Europe, the rest of Europe. Come on. The reason he would not meet with President Obama is because President Obama said, we're going to talk about denuclearization. We're not going to legitimize you, and we're going to continue to put stronger and stronger sanctions on you. That's why he wouldn't meet with us.
All right,
And
let's
it didn't
move
happen.
on. Let's
Excuse
move on
me.
and talk
He
about
left
American
me a
families.
mess, Kristen.
President Trump, okay, we do
They
need to
left
move on.
me a mess. North
Mute
Korea
button.
was a mess.
We
And
need
in
to
fact,
move
if
on
you
so that
remember
we
the
can get
first
to all
2 or
of
3
our
months,
questions tonight,
there was a
Mute
very
button.
dangerous period in my
Come
first
on.
3 months before we sort of worked things out
Come
a little
on.
bit.
Okay.
There was a very they left us a mess, and Obama would be, I think, the first to say it was the single biggest problem he thought that our country had.
Okay, let's move on to American families and the economy. One of the issues that's most important to them is health care, as you both know. Today, there was a key vote on a new Supreme Court Justice, Amy Coney Barrett, and health care is at the center of her confirmation fight. Over 20 million Americans get their health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. It's headed to the Supreme Court, and your administration, Mr. President, is advocating for the court to overturn it. If the Supreme Court does overturn that law, those 20 million Americans could lose their health insurance almost overnight. So what would you do if those people have their health insurance taken away? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Sure. First of all, I've already done something that nobody thought was possible. Through the legislature, I terminated the individual mandate. That is the worst part of Obamacare, as we call it. The individual mandate where you have to pay a fortune for the privilege of not having to pay for bad health insurance. I terminated. It's gone. Now it's in court because Obamacare is no good. But then I made a decision. Run it as well as you can to my people, great people. Run it as well as you can. I could have gone the other route and made everybody very unhappy. They ran it. Premiums are down. Everything's down. Here's the problem. No matter how well you run it, it's no good. What we'd like to do is terminate it. We have the individual mandate done. I don't know that it's going to work. If we don't win, we will have to run it, and we'll have Obamacare, but it'll be better run. But it no longer is Obamacare, because without the individual mandate, it's much different. Pre-existing conditions will always stay. What I would like to do is a much better health care, much better, will always protect people with pre-existing. So I'd like to terminate Obamacare, come up with a brand new, beautiful health care. The Democrats will do it because there'll be tremendous pressure on them, and we might even have the House by that time, and I think we're going to win the House, okay? You'll see, but I think we're going to win the House. But come up with a better health care, always protecting people with pre-existing conditions. And one thing very important, we have 180 million people out there that have great private health care. Far more than we're talking about with Obamacare. Joe Biden is going to terminate all of those policies. These are people that love their health care, people that have been successful, middle-income people.
He said 4 years to make this plan he's talking about.
80 million plans, 180 million people, families, under what he wants to do, which will basically be socialized medicine. He won't even have a choice. They want to terminate 180 million plans. We have done an incredible job on health care, and we're going to do even better.
Okay.
Oh,
Mr. President
looks like
Biden,
he
yes,
got
this
muted
is
a
for
little
you.
bit.
Your health care plan calls for building on Obamacare. So my question is, what is your plan if the law is ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
What I'm going to do is pass Obamacare with a public option. It'll become Biden care. The public option is an option that says that if you, in fact, do not have the wherewithal to be, if you qualify for Medicaid and you do not have the wherewithal in your state to get Medicaid, you automatically are enrolled, providing competition for insurance companies. That's what's going to happen. Secondly, we're going to make sure we reduce the premiums and reduce drug prices by making sure that there's competition that doesn't exist now by allowing the Medicare to negotiate drug prices with the insurance companies. Thirdly, the idea that I want to eliminate private insurance, the reason why I had such a fight with 20 candidates for the nomination was I support private insurance. That's why I didn't. Not one single person with private insurance would lose their insurance under my plan, nor did they under Obamacare. They did not lose their insurance unless they chose they wanted to go to something else. Lastly, we're going to make sure we're in a situation that we actually protect pre-existing. There's no way he can protect pre-existing conditions. None, zero. You can't do it in the ether. He's been talking about this for a long time. He's never come up with a plan. I guess we're going to get the pre-existing condition plan the same time we get the infrastructure plan that we've been waiting since 17, 18, 19, and 20. The fact, I still have a few more minutes. I know you're getting anxious. The fact is that he's already cost the American people, because of his terrible handling of the COVID virus and the economic spillover, 10 million people have lost their private insurance. And he wants to take away 22 million more people who have it under Obamacare, and over 110 million people with pre-existing conditions. And all the people from COVID are going to have pre-existing conditions. What are they going to do?
I have a follow-up for you, Vice President Biden. It relates to something that President Trump said.
That's 8 million people, by the way.
Socialized medicine. What do you say to people who have concerns that your health care plan, which includes a government insurance option, takes the country one step closer to a health care system run entirely by the government? What's your response to them? I say
it's ridiculous. It's like saying that, the idea that the fact that there's a public option that people can choose, that makes it a socialist plan. Look, the difference between the president, I think health care is not a privilege, it's a right. Everyone should have the right to have affordable health care. And I am very proud of my plan. It's gotten endorsed by all the major labor unions, as well as a whole range of other people who, in fact, are concerned in the medical field. This is something that's going to save people's lives, and this is going to give some people an opportunity to have health care for their children. How many of you home are worried and rolling around in bed tonight wondering what in God's name you're going to do if you get sick? because you've lost your home insurance, your health insurance, your company's gone under. We have to provide health insurance for people at an affordable rate, and that's what I do.
President Trump,
Excuse me, he was
your
there
response.
for 47 years. He didn't do it. He was now there as vice president for 8 years, and it's not like it was 25 years ago. It was 3 3/4. It was just a little while ago, right? Less than 4 years ago. He didn't do anything. He didn't do it. He wants socialized medicine, and it's not that he wants it. His vice president, I mean, she is more liberal than Bernie Sanders and wants it even more. Bernie Sanders wants it. The Democrats want it. You're going to have socialized medicine, just like he went with fracking. We're not going to have fracking. We're going to stop fracking. We're going to stop fracking. Then he goes to Pennsylvania after he gets a nomination, where he got very lucky to get it. And he goes to Pennsylvania, and he says, oh, we're going to have fracking. And you never asked that question. And by the way, so far, I respect very much the way you're handling this, I have to say.
By the way.
But somebody should ask the question.
You can ask
he goes for a year. There will be no fracking. There will be no petroleum.
We have a number of topics we're going to get to.
That's a big question.
We're going to get to.
It's the same thing with socialized
I have
medicine.
to respond.
Vice President, your response, please.
My response is people deserve to have affordable health care, period. Period, period, period. And the Biden care proposal will, in fact, provide for that affordable health care, lower premiums. What we're going to do is going to cost some money. It's going to cost over $750 billion over 10 years to do it. And they're going to have lower premiums. You can buy into the better plans, the cheaper plans, lower your premiums, deal with unexpected billing, and have your drug prices drop significantly. He keeps talking about it. He hasn't done a thing for anity on health care. Not a thing.
Tristan, when
Very
he
quickly,
says,
then I want to talk
when
about
he
what's
says
happening on
public
Capitol
option,
Hill.
he's talking about socialized medicine and health care. When he talks about a public option, he's talking about destroying your Medicare, totally destroyed, and destroying your Social Security. And this whole country will come down. You know, Bernie Sanders tried it in his state. He tried it in his state. His governor was a very liberal governor. They wanted to make it work.
Okay,
let's let Vice President
Biden respond.
It doesn't
Vice
work.
President
He's
Biden,
a very
your response.
confused guy. He thinks he's running against somebody else. He's running against Joe Biden. I beat all those other people because I disagreed with them. Joe Biden he's running against. And the idea that we're in a situation that they're going to destroy Medicare, this is the guy that the actuary at Medicare said, if in fact, at Social Security, if in fact he continues to withhold his plan to withhold the tax on Social Security will be bankrupt by 2023 with no way to make up for it. This is the guy who's tried to cut Medicare. So I mean, the idea that Donald Trump is lecturing me on Social Security and Medicare? Come on.
He tried to get rid of, he tried to hurt Social Security years ago. Years ago. Go back and
Trump's latest budget cut Social Security and Medicare.
years ago.
All right, let's move on. I'm going to move on.
Mr.
President, I have to move on to the next question.
They said
or
the
else
stock
we're not
market
gonna
will
have time to
boom
talk about it.
if I'm elected. If he's elected, the stock market will crash.
Okay, let's
biggest
move on to the
analysts are
next
saying
question.
Let me respond.
Very quickly.
Look, the idea that the stock market is booming is his only measure of what's happening. Where I come from in Scranton and Claymont, the people don't live off of the stock market. Just in the last three years during this crisis, the billionaires in this country made, according to the Wall Street, $700 billion more dollars. $700 billion more dollars, because that's his only measure. What happens to the ordinary people out there? What happens to them?
Let's talk about what's happening on Capitol Hill. We're going to move on,
401ks are through the roof.
We're going to move on.
Stock are through the roof.
All right.
And he doesn't come from Scranton. That's like he lived there for a short period of time before he even knew it.
We're going to move on to the next
left.
question.
And the people of Pennsylvania
Let me
will
move
show
on
you
to my
that.
next question,
They
gentlemen.
understand.
As of tonight, more than 12 million people are out of work. And as of tonight, 8 million more Americans have fallen into poverty, and more families are going hungry every day. Those hit hardest are women and people of color. They see Washington fighting over a relief bill. Mr. President, why haven't you been able to get them the help they need? 30 seconds here.
Because Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve it. I do.
But you're the president.
I do, but I still have to get. Unfortunately, that's one of the reasons I think we're going to take over the House, because of her. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to approve anything because she'd love to have some victories on a date called November 3rd. Nancy Pelosi does not want to approve it. We are ready, willing, and able to do something. Don't forget, we've already approved 3 plans, and it's gone through, including the Democrats, in all fairness. This one she doesn't want. It's near the election because she thinks it helps her politically. I think it hurts her politically.
All right, Mr. Vice President,
The HEROES Act has been sitting on McConnell's desk since May, and Trump didn't
Can't
support
pass it. He will not be able to pass it. He does not have Republican votes. Why isn't he talking to his Republican friends?
let me follow up with
'Cause
you,
he
Vice
doesn't want it
President
passed.
We made a deal,
Biden,
the
because
Republicans
let me
will
ask
pass
Vice
it.
President Biden a question. You are the leader of the Democratic Party. Why have you not pushed the Democrats to get a deal for the American people?
Well, I have, and they have pushed it. Look, they passed this act all the way back in the beginning of the summer. This is like it's not new. It's
The HEROES
been
Act
out
is in
there.
May.
This HEROES Act has been sitting there. And look at what's happening. When I was in charge of the Recovery Act with $800 billion, I was able to get $145 billion to local communities that have to balance their budgets and states that have to balance their budgets, so then have to fire firefighters, teachers, first responders, law enforcement officers, so they could keep their cities and counties running. He will not support that. They have not done a thing for them. And Mitch McConnell said, let them go bankrupt. Let them go bankrupt. Come on. What's the matter with
The
these
bill that was
guys?
passed in the House was a bailout of badly run, high-crime, Democrat, all run by Democrats, cities and states. It was a way of getting a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars to these states. It was also a way of getting a lot of money from our people's pockets to people that come into our country illegally. We were going to take care of everything for them. And what that does, and I'd love to do that, I'd love to help them, but what that does, everybody all over the world will start pouring into our country. We can't do it. This was a way of taking care of them. This was a way of spending on things that had nothing to do with COVID, as per your question. But it was really a big bailout for badly run Democrat cities and states.
All right,
By the
I
way,
want
if
to.
I get elected, I'm running as a proud Democrat, but I'm going to be an American president. I don't see red states and blue states. What I see is American, United States. And folks, every single state out there finds themselves in trouble. They're going to start laying off, whether they're red or blue, cops, firefighters, first responders, teachers, because they have to balance their budget. And the founders were smart. They allowed the federal government to deficit spend to compensate for the United States of America.
I want to talk about the minimum wage, gentlemen. Mr. Vice President, we are talking a lot about struggling small businesses and business owners these days. Do you think this is the right time to ask them to raise the minimum wage? You, of course, support a $15 federal minimum wage.
I do, because I think one of the things we're going to have to do is we're going to have to bail them out, too. We should be bailing them out now, those small businesses. You got 1 in 6 of them going under. They're not going to be able to make it back. They passed a package that allows us to be able to call PPP. Money is supposed to go to help them do everything from organize how they can deal with their businesses being open safely. Schools, how they can make classrooms smaller, how they can hire more teachers, how they can put ventilation systems in. They need the help. The businesses as well as the schools need the help. But these guys will not help them. Is not giving them any of the money.
We are going to move on to immigration,
one thing very
but I
quickly,
want
he
to get
said we
your
have to help our
reaction.
small businesses by raising the minimum wage. That's not helping. I think it should be a state option. Alabama is different than New York. New York is different from Vermont. Every state is different. It should be a state option.
You said very
we have
recently-
to help. It's very important. We have to help our small businesses.
You
How
said-
are you helping your small businesses when you're forcing wages? What's going to happen, and what's been proven to happen, is when you do that, these small businesses fire many of their employees.
You said very
Not true,
recently you would
by the way.
consider raising the federal minimum
it.
wage to $15
Say
an
it.
hour. You said recently you would consider raising the federal minimum wage to
What I
$15 an
really
hour. Is that
like,
still the case?
And I would consider it to an extent, but
In a
what I
second
really
administration?
like, in a second administration, but not to a level that's going to put all these businesses out of business. It should be a state option. Look, I've lived in different places. I know different places. They're all different. Some places, $15 is not so bad. In other places, other states, $15 would be
Okay, President
ruinous.
Trump, thank you. Quick response, Vice President Biden.
2 jobs, 1 job, be below poverty. People are making $6, $7, $8 an hour. These first responders, we all clap for as they come down the street because they've allowed us to make it. What's happening? They deserve a minimum wage of $15. Anything below that puts you below the poverty level. And there is no evidence that when you raise the minimum wage, businesses go out of business. That is simply not true.
We're going to talk about immigration. We're going to talk about immigration now, gentlemen, and we're going to talk about families within this context. Mr. President, your administration separated children from their parents at the border, at least 4,000 kids. You've since reversed your zero-tolerance policy, but the United States can't locate the parents of more than 500 children. So how will these families ever be reunited?
Children are brought here by coyotes and lots of bad people, cartels, and they're brought here, and they used to use them to get into our country. We now have as strong a border as we've ever had. We're over 400 miles of brand new wall. You see the numbers, and we let people in, but they have to come in legally, and they come in through merit.
But how will you reunite these kids with their families,
let me just tell you,
Mr. President?
They built cages. You know, they used to say, I built the cages, and then they had a picture in a certain newspaper.
He's not going to answer this question.
Of these horrible cages, and they said, look at these cages. President Trump built them, and then it was determined they were built in 2014. That was him.
Do you have a plan to reunite the kids?
Yes, we're working on it we're trying very hard.
Strongly.
But a lot of these kids come out without the parents. They come over through cartels and through coyotes and through gangs.
Vice President Biden, let me bring you into this conversation. Quick response and then another question to you.
These 500 plus kids came with parents. They separated them at the border to make it a disincentive to come to begin with. Real tough. We're really strong. And guess what? They cannot, it's not coyotes didn't bring them over. Their parents were with them. They got separated from their parents. And it makes us a laughing stock and violates every notion of who we are as a nation.
Let me ask you a follow-up question.
Kristen, they did it. We changed the policy.
Your response
they
to that?
They did it. We changed.
Did not
They built the
separate
cages.
They,
who built the cages, Joe?
Let's talk about what
who built the cages,
about.
Joe?
Let's talk about what we're talking about. What happened? Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated. And now they cannot find over 500 sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask
Kristen,
you about
I will say this.
immigration.
They went
10
down.
seconds,
We
and
brought
then I need to ask
reporters,
you.
everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some
and
of
have
them
gotten
haven't been
such
reunited
But
with their
just ask
families.
one question.
Hey, they had clean toilets, so I guess you don't need your parents after
The
all.
cages.
Let me ask about your immigration policy, Mr. Vice President. The Obama administration did fail to deliver immigration reform, which had been a key promise during the administration. It also presided over record deportations as well as family detentions at the border before changing course. So why should voters trust you with an immigration overhaul now?
Because we made a mistake. It took too long to get it right. It took too long to get it right. I'll be president of the United States, not vice president of the United States. And the fact is, I've made it very clear. Within 100 days, I'm going to send to the United States Congress a pathway to citizenship for over 11 million undocumented people. And all of those so-called dreamers, those DACA kids, they're going to be immediately certified again to be able to stay in this country and put on a path to citizenship. The idea that they are being sent home by this guy, and they want to do that, is they've gone to a country they've never seen before. I can imagine you're 5 years old, your parents are taking you across the Rio Grande River, and it's illegal. And you say, oh no, Mom, leave me here. I'm not going to go with you. They've been here. Many of them are model citizens. Over 20,000 of them are first responders out there taking care of people during this crisis. We owe them. We owe them.
Kristen, he had 8 years to do what he said he was going to do. And I've changed without having a specific. We got rid of catch and release. We got rid of a lot of horrible things that they put in and that they lived with. But he had 8 years he was vice president. He did nothing except build cages to keep children in.
Vice President
Wrong.
Biden, your response.
The catch and release, you know what he's talking about there? If in fact you had a family came across and they were arrested, they in fact were given a date to show up for their hearing. They were released, and guess what? They showed up for a hearing. And this is the first president in the history of the United States of America that anybody seeking asylum has to do it in another country. That's never happened before in America. That's never happened before in America. You come to the United States and you make your case that I seek asylum based on the following on the following premise: why I deserve it under American law. They're sitting in squalor on the other side of the river.
President Trump, your response,
So
30
important.
seconds, and then we'll move
It just shows that he has no understanding of immigration or the laws. Catch and release is a disaster. A murderer would come in, a rapist would come in, a very bad person would come in. We would take their name. We have to release them into our country. And then you say they come back. Less than 1% of the people come back. We have to
It was more than 90% in the program that was started during that
find
administration.
them. We would say, come back in 2 years, 3 years. We're going to give you a court case. You need Perry Mason. We're going to give you a court case. When you say they come back, they don't come back, Joe. They never come back. Only the really, I hate to say this, but those with the lowest IQ, they might come back.
Okay,
But they're
President
very,
Trump, let's
very
give
few.
Vice President Biden a chance to respond, and then we're going to move on to the
You
next
don't know
section.
the law, Joe.
Vice President Biden, your response.
Know the law, what he's telling you is simply not true.
Well, check it out. They don't come back.
Check it out.
All right, let's move on
But we don't have to
the
worry
next
about it because they
section.
terminated it, so we don't have to worry about
Let's
it
move
anymore.
on to the next
And you have
section.
525 kids not knowing where in God's name they're going to be and lost their parents.
Go ahead.
All right,
Bingo.
let's talk
And he
about
says
our
good.
next section, which is,
Should speak volumes, he says good.
and I want to talk about the way Black and brown Americans experience race in this country. Part of that experience is something called the talk. It happens regardless of class and income. Parents who feel they have no choice but to prepare their children for the chance that they could be targeted, including by the police, for no reason other than the color of their skin. Mr. Vice President, in the next 2 minutes, I want you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
I do. I do. You know, my daughter is a social worker, and she's written a lot about this. She has her graduate degree from the University of Pennsylvania in social work. And you know, one of the reasons why I ended up working on the east side of Wilmington, Delaware, which is 90% African American, was to learn more about what was going on. I never had to tell my daughter, if she's pulled over, make sure she puts, for a traffic stop, put both hands on top of the wheel and don't reach for the glove box because someone may shoot you. But a black parent, no matter how wealthy or how poor they are, has to teach their child, when you're walking down the street, don't have a hoodie on when you go across the street. Making sure that you, in fact, if you get pulled over, just yes, sir, no, sir, hands on top of the wheel, because you are, in fact, the victim, whether you're a person making child of a $300,000 a year person or someone who's on food stamps. The fact of the matter is, there is institutional racism in America. And we have always said, we've never lived up to it, that we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created equal. But guess what? We have never, ever lived up to it, but we've always constantly been moving the needle further and further to inclusion, not exclusion. This is the first president to come along and says, that's the end of that. We're not going to do that anymore. We have to provide for economic opportunity, better education, better health care, better access to schooling, better access to opportunity to borrow money to start businesses. All the things we can do, and I've laid out a clear plan as to how to do those things, just to give people a shot. It's about accumulating the ability to have wealth as well as it is to be free from violence.
President Trump, same question to you, and let me remind you of the question. I would like you to speak directly to these families. Do you understand why these parents fear for their children?
Yes, I do. And again, he's been in government 47 years. He never did a thing except in 1994 when he did such harm to the black community. And they were called, and he called them, super predators. And he said that. He said it, super predators. And they have never lived that down. 1994, your crime bill, the super predators. Nobody has done more for the black community than Donald Trump. And if you look, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln, possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln, nobody has done what I've done. Criminal justice reform, Obama and Joe didn't do it. I don't even think they tried because they had no chance at doing it. They might have wanted to do it, but if you had to see the arms I had to twist to get that done, it was not a pretty picture, and everybody knows it, including some very liberal people that cried in my office. They cried in the Oval Office. 2 weeks later, they're out saying, gee, we have to defeat him. Criminal justice reform, prison reform, opportunity zones with Tim Scott, a great senator from South Carolina. He came in with this incredible idea for opportunity zones. It's one of the most successful programs. People don't talk about it. Tremendous investment is being made. Biggest beneficiary, the Black and Hispanic communities, and then historically Black colleges and universities. After 3 years of coming to the office, I love some of those guys. They were great. They came into the office and I said, what are you doing? After 3 years, I said, why do you keep coming back? Because we have no funding. I said, you don't have to come back every year. We have to come back because President Obama would never give them long-term funding, and I did. 10-year long-term funding, and I gave them more money than they asked for because they said, I think you need more. And I said, the only bad part about this is I may never see you again because I got very friendly with them, and they like me and I like them. But I saved historically Black colleges and universities.
Okay, and we're going to talk about both of your records, but your response to that, Vice President?
My response to that is I never, ever said what he accused me of saying. The fact of the matter is, in 2000, though, after the crime bill had been in the law for a while, this is a guy who said, the problem with the crime bill, there's not enough people in jail. There's not enough people in jail. And go on my website, get the quote, the date when he said it. Not enough people. He talked about marauding gangs, young gangs, and the people who are going to maraud our cities. This is a guy who in the Central Park five innocent Black kids, he continued to push for making sure that they got the death penalty. None of them were guilty of the crimes they were suggested. Look, and talk about granted, he did in fact let 20 people, he commuted 20 people's sentences. We commuted over 1,000 people's sentences. Over 1,000. The very law he's talking about is a law that, in fact, initiated by Barack Obama. And secondly, we're in a situation here where the federal prison system was reduced by 38,000 people under our administration. And one of these things we should be doing, there should be no minimum mandatories in the law. That's why I'm offering $20 billion to states to change their state laws to eliminate minimum mandatories and set up drug courts. No one should be going to jail because they have a drug problem. They should be going to rehabilitation, not to jail. We should fundamentally change the system, and that's what I'm going to do.
But why didn't he do it 4 years ago? Why didn't you do
vice
that
president
4 years ago, even less than that? Why didn't you
I
do it?
am
You were
not-
vice president. You keep talking about all these things you're going to do, and you're going to do this, but you were there just a short time ago.
Biden wasn't president 4 years ago.
You know, Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job. If I thought you did a good job, I would have never run. I would have never run. I ran because of you. I'm looking at you now. You're a politician. I ran because of you.
All right, Vice President Biden, your response to that, and then I do have some questions for both of you.
Well, I tell you what, I hope he does look at me, because what's happening here is, you know who I am, you know who he is, you know his character, you know my character, you know our reputations for honor and telling the truth.
Smart.
I am anxious to have this race. I am anxious to see this take place. The character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
Let me ask some
Excuse me.
Please respond, and then we're going to have follow-up
If this stuff is
questions.
true about Russia, Ukraine, China, other countries, Iraq, if this is true, then he's a corrupt politician.
All right.
So don't give me the stuff about how you're this innocent baby. Joe, they're calling you a corrupt politician.
Nobody-
Take a look
President
at the
Trump,
laptop
I want to
from
stay
hell.
on the issue
Excuse
of
me,
race. We're
take a
talking
look at
about
the
the issue.
laptop from hell.
President Trump, we're
Nobody-
talking about race right now, and I do want to stay on the issue of race. President Trump,
And I
you've
have
just
to respond to that.
Please,
Because look,
very
there
quickly.
are 50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the five former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage. Nobody believes it except his and his good friend Rudy Giuliani.
You mean the laptop is now another Russia hoax?
And
You
that's
gotta be-
exactly
Is
this
this
is
where he's-
exactly what
This
was
is
told.
where he's going. The
That-
laptop is Russia,
Yes.
Gentlemen,
Russia.
I want to stay on the issue of race.
It's literally a Russian disinformation campaign.
We're going to continue on the issue of race. Mr. President, you've
that one.
described the Black Lives Matter movement as a symbol of hate. You've shared a video of a man chanting white power to millions of your supporters. You've said that black professional athletes exercising their First Amendment rights should be fired. What do you say to Americans who say that kind of language from a president is contributing to a climate of hate and racial strife?
Well, you have to understand, the first time I ever heard of Black Lives Matter, they were chanting pigs in a blanket, talking about police. Pigs, talking about our police. Pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. I said, that's a horrible thing. And they were marching down the street. And that was my first glimpse of Black Lives Matter. I thought it was a terrible thing. As far as my relationships with all people, I think I have great relationships with all people. I am the least racist person in this room.
But what do you say to Americans who are concerned by that rhetoric?
I don't know. I don't know
videos?
what to say. I got criminal justice reform done and prison reform and opportunity zones. I took care of black colleges and universities. I don't know what to say. They can say anything. I mean, they can say anything. It makes me sad because I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark. But I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person.
And tell that to the Central Park Five.
Mr. Biden, let me ask you very quickly, and then I have a follow-up question for you.
Abraham Lincoln here is one of the most racist presidents we've had in modern history. He pours fuel on every single racist fire. Every single one. Started off his campaign coming down the escalator saying he's going to get rid of those Mexican rapists. He's banned Muslims because they're Muslims. He has moved around and made everything worse across the board. He says about the poor boys, last time we were on stage here, he said, I told them to stand down and stand ready. Come on. This guy has a dog whistle about as big as a foghorn.
President Trump, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I have a follow-up question.
He made a reference to Abraham Lincoln. Where did that come in? I mean,
You said you're Abraham Lincoln.
No, where did that? No.
You said-
I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community.
And I'm saying-
I didn't say I'm Abraham Lincoln. I said not since Abraham Lincoln has anybody done what I've done for the black community.
He was being
now,
sarcastic.
You have done nothing other than the crime bill, which put
Oh, God.
tens of thousands of black men, mostly, in jail.
All right, let me,
And you know what?
let me
They
ask
remember
Vice
it
President
because if you
Biden
look
a
at what's
question.
happening with the voting right now,
Let me ask
they
Vice
remember
President
that you
Biden
treated them
about-
very, very badly.
The-
Just
the-
take a look at what's happening out there.
Vice President Biden, let me give you a chance to respond within this context. Crime
Okay.
bills that you supported in the 80s and 90s contributed to the incarceration of tens of thousands of young black men who had small amounts of drugs in their possession. They are sons, they are brothers, they're fathers, they're uncles, whose families are still to this day, some of them suffering the consequences. So speak to those families. Why should they vote for you?
One of the things is that in the 80s, we passed 100%, all 100 senators voted for it, a bill on drugs and how to deal with drugs. It was a mistake. I've been trying to change the since then, particularly the portion on cocaine. That's why I've been arguing that, in fact, we should not send anyone to jail for a pure drug offense. They should be going into treatment across the board. That's what we should be spending money on. That's why I set up drug courts, which were never funded by our Republican friends. They should not be going to jail for a drug or an alcohol problem. They should be going into treatment. That's what we've been trying to do. That's what I'm going to get done because I think the American people have now seen that, in fact, it was a mistake to pass those laws relating to drug. But they were not in the crime bill.
Simple as that.
But why didn't
Simple
he
as
get
that.
it done? See, it's all talk, no action with these politicians. Why didn't he get it done? That's what I'm going to do when I become president. You were vice president along with Obama as your president, your leader, for 8 years. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years to get it done. Now you're saying you're going to get it done because you're all talk and no action, Jim.
We got a
Your
lot of
response.
it done.
This is the guy saying that he's going to get health care done in 2 weeks.
You got nothing done.
38,000 prisoners were released from federal prison. There were over 1,000 people who were given clemency. In fact, we're the ones that put in the legislation saying we could look at pattern and practice of police departments and what they were doing, how they were conducting themselves. I could go on, but we began the process. We began the process. We lost an election. That's why I'm running to win back that election and change his terrible policy.
Quick response, and then we're going to move on to climate change.
Why didn't you do it in the 8 years, a short time ago? Why didn't you do it? You just said, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this. You put tens of thousands of mostly black young men in prison. Now you're saying you're going to undo that. Why didn't you get it done? You had 8 years with Obama. You know why, Joe? Because you're all talk and no action.
All right, Vice President Biden, and then we're going to move on to the next section.
We had a Republican Congress.
Simple as that.
That's the answer.
Well, you
Okay.
got to talk them into it, Joe.
All right.
Sometimes you got to talk them into it.
We're going to move on to our next section,
Like I
which
did
is
with criminal
climate
justice
change.
reform. I had
Okay.
to talk Democrats into it.
Gentlemen,
You did what we
we're running out of
already done.
time, so we got to get on to
Okay.
climate change, please. You both have very different visions on climate change. President Trump, you say that environmental regulations have hurt jobs in the energy sector. Vice President Biden, you have said you see addressing climate change as an opportunity to create new jobs. For each of you, how would you both combat climate change and support job growth at the same time? Starting with you, President Trump, you have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
So we have the Trillion Trees program. We have so many different programs. I do love the environment, but what I want is the cleanest, crystal clear water.
He's rolled back 100 environmental
We
regulations.
have the best, lowest number in carbon emissions, which is a big standard that I notice Obama goes with all the time. Not Joe. I haven't heard Joe use the term because I'm not sure he knows what it represents or means, but I have heard Obama use it. And we have the best carbon emission numbers that we've had in 35 years under this administration. We are working so well with industry, but here's what we can't do. Look at China, how filthy it is. Look at Russia. Look at India. It's filthy. The air is filthy. The Paris Accord, I took us out because we were going to have to spend trillions of dollars, and we were treated very unfairly. When they put us in there, they did us a great disservice. They were going to take away our businesses. I will not sacrifice tens of millions of jobs, thousands and thousands of companies because of the Paris Accord. It was so unfair. China doesn't kick in until 2030. Russia goes back to a low standard, and we kicked in right away. It would have destroyed our businesses. So, you ready? We have done an incredible job environmentally. We have the cleanest air, the cleanest water, and the best carbon emission standards that we've seen in many, many years.
Vice President
And we
Biden.
haven't destroyed our industries.
Vice President Biden, 2 minutes to you, uninterrupted.
Climate change and climate warming, global warming, is an existential threat to humanity. We have a moral obligation to deal with it. And we're told by all the leading scientists in the world we don't have much time. We're going to pass the point of no return within the next 8 to 10 years. 4 more years of this man eliminating all the regulations that were put in by us to clean up the climate, to limit the limit of emissions will put us in a position where we're going to be in real trouble. Here's where we have a great opportunity. I was able to get both all the environmental organizations as well as labor, the people worried about jobs, to support my climate plan. Because what it does, it will create millions of new good-paying jobs. We're going to invest in, for example, 50,000 charging stations on our highways so that we can own the electric car market of the future. In the meantime, China is doing that. We're going to be in a position where we're going to see to it that we're going to take 4 million existing buildings and 2 million existing homes and retrofit them so they don't leak as much energy, saving hundreds of millions of barrels of oil in the process and creating significant number of jobs. And by the way, the whole idea of what this is all going to do, it's going to create millions of jobs, and it's going to clean the environment. Our health and our jobs are at stake. That's what's happening. And what right now, by the way, Wall Street firms indicated that my plan will in fact create 18.6 million jobs, 7 million more than his. This is from Wall Street. And I'll create $1 trillion more in economic growth than his proposal does. Not on climate, just on the economy.
President Trump, you're
They came out and said very strongly, $6,500 will be taken away from families under his plan. That his plan is an economic disaster. If you look at what he wants to do, if you look at his plan, his environmental plan, you know who developed it? AOC +3. They know nothing about the climate. I mean, she's got a good line of stuff, but she knows nothing about the climate. And they're all
It's literally her top issue.
AOC +3. Look, their real plan costs $100 trillion. If we had the best year in the history of our country for 100 years, we would not even come close to a number like that. When he says buildings, they want to take buildings down because they want to make bigger windows into smaller windows. As far as they're concerned, if you had no window, it would be a lovely thing. This is the craziest plan that anybody has ever seen. And this wasn't done by smart people. This wasn't done by anybody. Frankly, I don't even know how it can be good politically. Right. They want to spend $100 trillion. That's their real number. He's trying to say it was 6. It's $100 trillion. They want to knock down buildings and build new buildings with little, tiny, small windows. I mean, and many other things.
Okay.
And many other things.
Let me have the Vice President respond, and we're running out of time, and we have a lot more questions to get to.
Country.
So let's hear from the Vice President. I have a number more questions.
I don't know where he comes from. I don't know where he comes up with these numbers.
Queens.
$100 trillion. Give me a break. This plan was endorsed by every major environmental group and every labor group. Labor, because they know the future lies. The future lies in us being able to breathe, and they know there are good jobs in getting us there. And by the way, the fastest growing industry in America is solar energy and wind. He thinks wind causes cancer, windmills. It's the fastest growing jobs, and they pay good prevailing wages, $45, $50 an hour. We can grow and we can be cleaner if we go the route I'm proposing.
President Trump, please
energy,
respond, and then I have some follow-ups.
We are energy independent for the first time. We don't need all of these countries that we had to fight war over because we needed their energy. We are energy independent. I know more about wind than you do. It's extremely expensive, kills all the birds. It's very intermittent. It's got a lot of problems. And they happen to make the windmills in both Germany and China. And the fumes coming up, if you're a believer in carbon emission, the fumes coming up to make these massive windmills is more than anything that we're talking about with natural gas, which is very clean. One other thing.
Find me a scientist said that.
I love solar, but solar doesn't quite have it yet. It's not powerful yet to really run our big, beautiful factories that we need to compete with the world. So it's all a pipe dream. But you know what we'll do? We're going to have the greatest economy in the world. But if you want to kill the economy, get rid of your oil industry. And what about fracking?
All right, let me allow Vice President Biden to respond.
I never said I oppose fracking.
You said it on tape.
I did. Show the tape. Put it on your website.
I'll put it on.
Put it on the website. The fact of the matter is he's flat lying.
Would you rule out banning fracking?
I do rule out banning fracking because the answer, we need other industries to transition to get to ultimately a complete zero emissions by 2025. What I will do with fracking over time is make sure that we can capture the emissions from the fracking, capture the emissions from gas. We can do that, and we can do that by investing money in doing it, but it's a transition to that.
I have one more question in this pod, and then we have...
He was against fracking. He said it. I will show that to you tomorrow. I am against fracking. Until he got the nomination, went to Pennsylvania, then he said, but you know what, Pennsylvania? He'll be against it very soon because his party is totally against it.
Fracking on federal land, I said. No fracking or oil on federal land.
Let me ask this final question in this section, and then I want to move on to our final section. President Trump, people of color are much more likely to live near oil refineries and chemical plants. In Texas, there are families who worry the plants near them are making them sick. Your administration has rolled back regulations on these kinds of facilities. Why should these families give you another 4 years in office?
The families that we're talking about are employed heavily, and they are making a lot of money, more money than they've ever made. If you look at the kind of numbers that we produce for Hispanic, for Black, for Asian, it's 9 times greater, the percentage gain, than it was in 3 years, than it was under 8 years of the 2 of them. to put it nicely. 9 times more. Now, somebody lives, I have not heard the numbers or the statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it, and I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic.
Okay.
We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationship, we got Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Russia to cut back, way back. We saved our oil industry, and now it's very vibrant again.
All right.
And everybody has very inexpensive gasoline. Remember
Vice President Biden, your response, and then we're going to have a final question for both of you.
My response is that those people live on what they call fence lines. He doesn't understand this. They live near chemical plants that, in fact, pollute, chemical plants and oil plants and refineries that pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing up in Claymont, Delaware. And all the more oil refineries in Marcus Hook and the Delaware River than there is any place, including in Houston at the time. When my mom get in the car and when there was first frost to drive me to school, turn in the windshield wiper, there'd be oil slick in the window. That's why so many people in my state were dying and getting cancer. The fact is, those frontline communities, it doesn't matter what you're paying them, it matters how you keep them safe. What do? And you impose restrictions on the pollutions, the pollutants coming out of those fence line communities.
Okay, I have one final
Would
question.
he close
It
down
falls-
the oil industry?
It falls.
Would you close
it
down the
falls-
oil
By the way, I
industry?
would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I would
that's
transition.
a big statement.
It is a big statement.
That's a big
because
statement.
I would stop
Why would you do that?
because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
Here's the deal, but
That's
you
a
can't
big
do
statement.
that. Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time.
Yeah, it's a great
over
answer.
time. And I'd stop giving to the oil industry, I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. He won't give federal subsidies to the gas, excuse me, to solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to oil industry?
We actually do
All
give
right.
it to solar and wind.
We
And
have
that's
one
maybe the
final
biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay.
Because
We have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying
question,
is he is
Mr.
going to
President.
destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you
Okay.
remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President Biden, let me give you 10 seconds to respond, and then
Ohio.
I have to get to the final question. Vice President Biden.
He takes everything out of context, but the point is, look, we have to move toward a net zero emissions. The first place to do that by the year 2035 is in energy production, by 2050 totally.
All right. One
Is he gonna
final
get
question
China
to
to
both
do
of
it?
you. No, we're finished with
Is
this.
he
We
going
have
to
to
get
move on
China
to
to
our
do it?
final question. We have to
I'm
move
going
on
to
to our
rejoin
final
Paris
question.
Accord and make China abide by what they agreed to.
All right,
That'll
this
cost you
is
$1
about
trillion.
leadership, gentlemen. And this first question does go to you, President Trump. Imagine this is your inauguration day. What will you say in your address to Americans who did not vote for you? You'll each have 1 minute, starting with you, Mr.
We have to make our country totally successful as it was prior to the plague coming in from China. Now we're rebuilding it, and we're doing record numbers, 11.4 million jobs in a short period of time, et cetera. But I will tell you, go back. Before the plague came in, just before, I was getting calls from people that were not normally people that would call me. They wanted to get together. We had the best black unemployment numbers in the history of our country. Hispanic, women, Asian, people with diplomas, with no diplomas, MIT graduates, #1 in the class. Everybody had the best numbers. And you know what? The other side wanted to get together. They wanted to unify. Success is going to bring us together. We are on the road to success. But I'm cutting taxes, and he wants to raise everybody's taxes, and he wants to put new regulations on everything. He will kill it. If he gets in, you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen. Your 401ks will go to hell, and it'll be a very, very sad day for this country.
All right. Vice President Biden, same question to you. What will you say during your inaugural address to Americans who did not vote for you?
I will say, I'm an American president. I represent all of you, whether you voted for me or against me. And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because we have enormous opportunities to make things better. We can grow this economy. We can deal with the systemic racism. And at the same time, we can make sure that our economy is being run and moved and motivated by clean energy, creating millions of new jobs. And that's the fact. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to say, as I said at the beginning, what is on the ballot here is the character of this country: decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance. And I'm going to make sure you get that. You haven't been getting it the last 4 years.
All right. I want to thank you both for a very robust hour and a half, a fantastic debate. Really appreciate it. President Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden, thank you to Belmont University for hosting us tonight. And most importantly, thank you to those watching tonight. Election Day is November 7th.
Stick around because it's time to do a little post-debate analysis. So let's talk about what we just saw. Here we go. There was a lot that was said. I think overall the point is that, you saw how easily Trump devolved back into the conspiracy theories, into, the Fox News bubble lies and the Hunter Biden stuff and the emails. And I mean, that's where he lives. That's where he's comfortable. So, even in instances where straightforward questions were being asked about issues that actually impact the American people that Biden had no problem answering, all we'd hear from Trump were, his desperation to get back into this nonsense about Hunter Biden and Russia and the Ukraine and Burisma. I mean, this is where he lives. This is what you'll get with another Trump term. This is what you already got 4 years of. It's this Hannity, Judge Jeanine, Laura Ingraham fever dream. That's what it is, and he put that on full display tonight. The fact is that what he needed to do tonight, what Donald Trump needed to do tonight, was get the small percentage of Americans who are still undecided, or the vast majority of Americans who've been polling in Biden's camp, he needed to bring those people over to his side. He didn't do that tonight. His ranting about Burisma is not going to get the American people to vote for this guy. This is more of the same. This is like, this is boxed wine with Judge Jeanine. That's not what's going to do it. I'm sorry. So let's go over some specific things that were said tonight. Real quick, what I would ask, if you could, please subscribe to my channel. I put out videos every day, 7 days a week. I've done 900 videos so far. So if you can, please just hit the subscribe button, and I'll keep making this content every single day. Okay, so let's dive into the post-debate analysis. Now, the first question, which was the most important stuff that we were exposed to right now, was here. Let's do. The first question that we were exposed to was about coronavirus. The fact is that Trump said right off the bat that he's successful at containing this virus because 2.2 million people were slated to die. The fact is, this figure that he got was what would have happened if he had done literally nothing at all. That's what Trump is bragging about. That 2.2 million people would have died had he just sat there and watched Fox News. Is that the bar for the president of the United States? Is that the bar for any leader of any country in the world, to do literally nothing? To just keep your slippers on and turn on TV and watch 6 hours in Fox programming, which, by the way, he does anyway. It was largely thanks to Democratic governors for picking up the reins where Trump left off, that we were able to contain the virus in certain states. We saw early explosions in blue states, in California, in New Jersey, in New York, in Michigan, and thankfully those governors, took quick action. Governor Newsom took quick action in California. We never had the spike that the rest of the country did. You look at Governor Murphy in New Jersey, Governor Whitmer. I mean, these people picked up the reins where Trump just completely dropped the ball. So no, 2 million people were slated to die is not an acceptable answer, because that would mean that Trump did literally nothing. That is not the bar for the president of the United States, the leader of the free world. Give me a break. Trump also goes on to say that, this thing is all over the world. Right. But not as badly as it is here. The fact is, we have 4% of the world's population and 20% of the world's cases. It's around the world. Look at those other countries. They've all gotten a handle on this thing way better than we have. The fact is, the death rate in South Korea is 1% of what it was here. In Canada, 39% of what it was here. That is not something to brag about. Yeah, it exploded across the world, but not like it did here. Trump says that he tries to absolve himself by claiming that a vaccine is coming, it's ready. Here's the thing. If Trump is looking for a vaccine, it's because it's a solution to this virus, right? That's what he wants. That's why he's saying that a vaccine is coming. The fact is, we already had a solution to this virus, and it's masks. And what did Trump do? Instead of advocating for the use of masks, he politicized masks. We've seen the guy wear a mask like 6 times over the last 8 months. That's a solution. That's something that reduces the spread of this virus by almost completely if both people are wearing masks. And yet, instead of advocating for this solution, which we have now, masks already exist. We don't have to wait for Johnson & Johnson. We don't have to wait for Moderna to give us masks. We already have them. All Trump did is push back against their widespread use. That is a massive miscalculation. So he can pretend that he wants a solution, and that's why he's pointing to vaccines, but he had a solution. It was masks, and he decided to push on the opposite direction with them. He says that they say I'm immune. No, nobody is saying Trump's immune because he already contracted coronavirus. In fact, people are recontracting coronavirus. If anything, they are saying that he's not immune because people that have contracted it already are coming down with it again. It doesn't mean immunity. And then Trump goes on, and this was one of my favorites. He goes on to say that he's been congratulated he's been congratulated as the president of the United States on what we've been able to do. What we've been able to do again is have 4% of the world's population and 20% of the world's cases. That is not something to... What world leader of any country is going to look at what happened in this country where we have the most cases and the most deaths on the face of the earth and say, congratulations, job well done. You have no control over this virus. It is spreading uninhibited. For almost months, we had no testing. We still have no contact tracing. We don't have enough PPE. My parents themselves are healthcare workers. They work in a hospital. I know my mom specifically didn't have a mask every day because there wasn't enough PPE to go around to all all of our frontline workers. So, for him to say that he's been congratulated on what we've been able to do, I mean, like, what we've been able to do is nothing worth congratulating. It's nothing worth congratulating, and the numbers prove that. You can listen to Trump's gaslighting, but the fact is the numbers speak for themselves. And what those numbers say is that we have the most cases in the world, the most deaths in the world. We have almost 250,000 Americans who've perished because of this virus. This is the 4th deadliest event in American history, and it's all happened under Trump's watch. Now, Biden points those things out. When it came Biden's turn to talk about coronavirus, he rightly points out the death toll in this country, and that speaks for itself. He rightly points out that if we had just worn masks, we would have saved 100,000 lives. Think about that. All you had to do was advocate for the use of masks, which are readily available. Anybody can make a mask out of anything. I could turn this into a mask. All you have to do is cover your face, and we would have saved 100,000 lives. And instead, all Trump did was push back against it and pretend that it was, if you're going to wear a mask, then you're going to be succumbing to the Antifa super soldiers, the Marxist communists who are on the left. You are trying to own your life and take away your freedoms. Well, congratulations. Now you have plenty of freedom to die with the other 220,000 Americans that we've lost during this virus. The fact is, Biden points out that Trump has no plan, and he's right. He still has no plan. There's been no plan, and the fact that he has no plan during the election, during his pitch to the American people, this is him on his best behavior, and he has no plan. Can you just imagine if Donald Trump got reelected, what it would look like? What another Trump presidency would look like? He's got no plan during the election. Can you imagine how laissez-faire of an attitude he would take if he actually took office again and was in charge with taking over this pandemic in the dead of winter when cases are rising to their highest point ever? Their highest point ever right now. 8 months into this virus, and we are at our worst point ever. We're at the peak of this virus now. It has only ever gotten worse under Trump's leadership. Trump goes on to say that he shut down travel to China. Here's the thing about that. 40,000 people still came in the country. 40,000 people still came into the country from China. And second of all, he can loud this, having taken this step of shutting down travel to China, but it didn't work. If it worked, we wouldn't have the most cases and the most deaths in the world. So he points to this thing. I mean, this is like me saying, like, we have the best fire department on the face of the earth while I'm standing next to a house that burned down to the ground. You can't say something was great or a solution if it hasn't been solved. It's as simple as that. Another point he makes is that Trump actually, and I cannot wrap my head around why he would bring this up. Trump talks about how Biden botched H1N1. H1N1, swine flu, had 12,500 deaths. the coronavirus has 220,000 deaths. Why you would bring up something that led to 20 times less casualties than the virus that he himself is overseeing is so beyond me. I mean, I couldn't even begin to wrap my head around it. Trump goes on to say that he was kidding when he talked about injecting bleach. There were a record number of calls to poison control centers across the country. Trump's supporters don't think he's kidding because they believe all the stupid shit that comes out of his mouth. The fact is that just look at the numbers. Look at the people who got poisoned because they went ahead and drank household products because they heard the president of the United States at a coronavirus task force briefing say that you should inject disinfectant. I mean, if he's joking, like, do we have a president who wants to be like, have his own stand-up routine? And if so, is the time to try out the new material during a coronavirus press briefing, a coronavirus task force briefing? Give me a break. He says that that New York is dying. It's a ghost town. First of all, most of my friends live in New York. If there's less traffic in New York, it's because all you have to do is look to the fact that the curve is on the floor in New York. New York had an excellent response to this pandemic. They had the worst curve in the beginning, and they brought it all the way down. That is a testament to the fact, not that city is dying, it's to the fact that that city is literally surviving. And yeah, businesses are going to have to slow down, but you know what? That's the price you pay when you want to keep people alive. And so we're either going to value the cost of a human life in this country, or we're going to go just full-blown reopen the country and just let as many people die as possible. The latter is what Trump is pushing for. The former is what anybody with sense is pushing for. Trump, and here's the craziest one. Trump said that Fauci said don't wear masks. That's right. Fauci said don't wear masks in February before we knew it was transmissible. And as soon as Fauci had more updated information, he changed that information. Fauci then went on and said we should wear masks. So Trump is still stuck on old information that he got from Fauci in February. Old information that we got from Fauci in February. How are we doing on the stream? Okay, cool. Sorry, I thought I had a technical glitch. Yeah, he's still stuck in this old information that we had from February. The fact is, as soon as we had new information, we updated that information and people altered their behavior. Trump didn't. He's still pointing to the fact that, Fauci said that we shouldn't wear masks. Forget what he said, in March and April and May and June and July and August and September and October, because Fauci said it one time in February. That's Trump's excuse. The fact is he just wanted to politicize masks, and he was pot committed to no masks, and so now he's just looking for any excuse he can to justify it. This has nothing to do with Dr. Fauci. This has everything to do with Donald Trump's own inability to adapt to the situation and show even a modicum of leadership. And this was the last thing on this section. Biden said that Trump didn't want to tell us because he was talking about Trump's not having told us about the virus because he didn't want us to panic. The fact is that Donald Trump himself panicked. He saw a threat to the stock market, and the stock market was his biggest talking point before the election. And so he panicked at the prospect of not being able to tout his stock market. And so he let this virus spread uninhibited. He stopped the cruise ship from docking in the United States, even though he had sick Americans on board, because he didn't want his numbers to go up. It was all part of this PR operation for him, where he was just trying to keep his numbers where he thought they would reflect best on him, with no regard whatsoever for the impacts on the American people's safety and health. Okay, so moving on to the issue of national security. Trump had said that Biden's family got $3.5 million from Russia. The fact is, I mean, this is the craziest attack that Trump could put forward, because you want to get into who owes money to who? Donald Trump has $400 million due to someone based on the New York Times story, and we don't know who it's due to. He has a secret Chinese bank account where he paid $188,000 in taxes. That means that he had business in China, and he still won't acknowledge that. I mean, when he wants to talk about foreign business deals, Donald Trump of all people, that is shaky ground to stand on. Trump goes on to say that he put up sanctions, which with regard to national security. Donald Trump took sanctions off of Russia that were put on by the Obama-Biden administration for interfering in this election. Obama put on sanctions to Russia, and expelled a bunch of Russian diplomats from the United States immediately before he left office. And the first thing that Donald Trump did is take those sanctions off. In fact, that was exactly why Mike Flynn was being investigated by the FBI, because he was discussing lifting sanctions and he was doing it illegally. You can't have a private citizen discussing, official business with foreign nations. It's a violation of the Logan Act. That's why the FBI was investigating Mike Flynn. It's why he was eventually fired, because he lied about it to Mike Pence. Trump says to Biden, this was rich. He goes to Biden, "You live very well. You have houses all over the place." Which, I mean, Donald Trump attacking somebody else for living well. If you look at any picture of Trump's home in Trump Tower, it is the tackiest gold-plated disaster that you've ever seen in your life. It looks like Liberace threw up all over it. It is just gold on gold on gold, and he's blaming he's accusing somebody else, Joe Biden from Scranton, of living too well. I mean, it's a clinic in projection is what it is, and we're going to see a lot more of that as I continue to go through this stuff. Trump said one of his lines was, "I never made any money in China." Donald Trump, we already know as of 48 hours ago that Trump paid $188,000 in taxes in China. You don't pay taxes if you didn't make money. So for Trump to say that he never made any money in China, well, he's either a really shitty businessman that he's paying almost $200,000 in taxes and not made a dime, or he's lying. Another thing he said was, with regard to China, was that China paid $28 billion because of tariffs. No, U.S. taxpayers paid that money because that is how tariffs work. Tariffs aren't paid by the country that's exporting the materials. It's paid by the importers, and those tariffs, the increased cost for the tariffs, are passed on to American consumers. It was us who paid more because of Trump's trade war. And even with regard to the farmers, I mean, this wasn't anything that benefited farmers. Soybean sales, China is our biggest purchaser of soybeans. Soybean sales fell 74% during Trump's trade war to a 50-year low. That's not anything to brag about. So he'll come around and brag that, like, oh, China just placed their biggest order ever for soybeans. Well, yeah, because we haven't sold a fraction of what we've normally sold for years. we haven't sold them for years. They've been sitting dormant, and it's killed American farmers, small farmers. It's absolutely killed them. Moving forward, he says that Biden changes the subject from rightly, which I think was the best move on this whole China thing. Biden changed the subject to, while we're getting mired in what foreign deals Trump has made, what foreign deals Biden supposedly made, $3.5 million from Russia and Ukraine and China. Biden just turned directly to the audience, looked straight down the barrel of the camera and said, "We should be talking about your families, but that is the last thing that Trump wants to talk about." And that says it all right there. The fact is, one of these people, all he can do is get mired in this minutia of Fox News conspiracy theories. This is where Trump thrives. This is where he lives. He wants to talk about, oh, well, I heard Joe Biden got $3.5 million from Russia. I didn't say it, but many people are saying it. You should probably look into that. Why don't you release this and that? This is where Trump thrives. It's just conspiracy theory after conspiracy theory. When the fact is, the American people do not give a shit about $3.5 million from China that doesn't exist. The American people are worried about jobs. We have 11 million jobs lost. We have 8% unemployment in this country. It's almost double the unemployment rate from when Obama and Biden left office. We have 220,000 Americans who've died. We have 1,000 Americans dying every day. You know what? Like, even me as a voter, like I said, I have both my parents that work in healthcare. You think that I'm worried about China? You think I'm worried about Ukraine? About Burisma? I'm just trying to make sure that my parents can go to work at the hospital and make it back the next day. And I'm not the only one. There's not a single person in this country who's not been touched by this virus, doesn't know someone who's died or had a family member who's died. That's the reality of the situation in this country. And you should pay attention to the fact that Trump doesn't want to talk about those things because they reflect poorly on him. They accurately depict his record, his failures, his mismanagement as president. So moving forward, the next thing that they jump into is Trump says with regard to the economy. Biden goes on and says, we'll create Biden Care, which is the first time that we've heard about this. Biden Care is, I guess he debuted a new term. This is basically the Affordable Care Act with a public option. And this will be necessary if and when the week after the election, when the Supreme Court, that will likely be 6-3 in conservatives' favor, will basically dismantle the ACA as a whole. And the ACA, by the way, is something that is wildly popular with the American people. This is something that Americans voted Democrats into the House by the biggest margin in American history over, was when we ran on the ACA for midterms. But now Republicans are hell-bent on destroying it, and doing so during a pandemic. So not only would it erase our ability to get coverage for pre-existing conditions, not only would it kick 20 million Americans off their health insurance, but we have 8 million people infected with coronavirus so far. That's a pre-existing condition. You are telling people during the worst pandemic in a century that the virus that they contracted will prevent them from being protected in the inevitable event that Republicans are able to take our healthcare away during that pandemic. I mean, it just, it's wild, and it goes to show you that they're not acting on behalf of the American people. They're just, acting, I guess, on behalf of Trump's ego, because Obamacare has the word Obama in it. Trump says that, he says that when he was asked to sketch out a scenario when he wins the election, he says that, with regard to getting a replacement for Obamacare, what he would want is to win re-election and then get Republicans control of Congress, and then they can come up with a great Obamacare replacement. Yeah, if only that had happened. It's not like he spent the first 2 years of his term with a full Republican majority in Congress. He had a full Republican majority. He had the House and the Senate and the presidency. And we had nothing. All he spent all of his political capital on was passing a tax cut for the super wealthy and corporations. That's what he did with his time. He's saying, oh, we need to take the presidency, we need to take the White House back, and in a second term, and we need to take back the House, and then we can pass a great replacement for Obamacare. Where were you the first 2 years of your administration? If this was so easy to do, if all you needed was unified control of government, why didn't you do it when you had it? That seems like the right question to be asking right now. Trump goes on to say that Biden wants to hurt Social Security and Medicare. Trump's own budget every year cuts Social Security and Medicare. There's nothing else to say on that subject other than, this is Trump saying, listen to what I say, not what I do. His own budget, and you can look it up. PolitiFact. Did Trump's budget cut Social Security and Medicare? Yes, it did, every single year. And luckily, Congress controls the power of the purse because they didn't allow that to happen. And it is wildly unpopular with the American people. But the fact is that Trump can go around saying that he wants to protect Social Security and Medicare, but nothing he's actually done would protect Social Security and Medicare. And if he had his way, he wouldn't protect Social Security and Medicare. It would be cut. Trump then points to, when he's talking about the stock market, when he's talking about the economy, he points to the stock market. And Biden rightly points out that people don't live off the stock market. Nobody's going to cash in on their dividends, their 401k, to survive day to day. So, it's great that the stock market was rising, but the stock market is not the economy. You hear that so often. The stock market is not the economy. And the fact is, all Trump wants to talk about is the stock market because the economy is not doing well. People are not in a favorable position during this pandemic, and Trump won't talk about that. All he'll talk about is the stock market because only one of those metrics is performing well. Trump asks Welker, the moderator, asks Biden why he hasn't pushed for Democrats to pass stimulus. That was one of the questions she asked. She goes, Vice President Biden, why haven't you asked, I know that you're not in government right now, but why haven't you asked the Democrats to pass stimulus? The HEROES Act has been sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk since May. Every single Democrat supports it. The HEROES Act is there. It's stimulus. Biden didn't not push Democrats to support it. It passed the House with the support of every single Democrat there is. So I mean, unfair question, but at the same time, the fact is, and Biden rightfully brought it up. He brought up the HEROES Act. It's been sitting there since the beginning of the summer. That is stimulus. That is what the American people needed. The only reason that Trump didn't want to pass it is because he doesn't care about the American people. He doesn't. He and Mitch McConnell, all they've ever tried to do is pass the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, because all they care about is businesses, not regular people. They just want businesses so they can take care of the CEOs who fund their campaigns. That's what this all comes down to. It's money. And now Trump suddenly, with 12 days to go into the election, he's saying, oh, yeah, you know what? In fact, we do need stimulus. But he knows full well that McConnell's already come out and said that he won't pass it. He's just doing this to help himself. If Trump really wanted to pass stimulus, he would have done it. He would have pushed for Republicans to pass stimulus in June, in July, August, September. I mean, come on, we're 12 days away from the election. You've been stalling stimulus. Your entire party's been stalling stimulus since May, and now you come out and say, oh yeah, people are going to the polls right now. Well, actually, in fact, I do support stimulus. Yeah, that's right. I do support it after all. Let's move over to children at the border. So Trump says that we're working very hard to reunite kids, but that coyotes brought them over. No, it was their parents who were ripped away from them. The whole point of this child separation policy is that children were separated from their parents. Administration officials went on TV, went on Fox News, and admitted, clear as day, that the whole point was deterrence. It was to show people that if you come to this country, you will have your child taken away from you. They admitted that. Jeff Sessions went on Fox News and said it outright. I believe to maybe Brett Baier, some Fox News host, but that interview exists. They gave the whole game away, so he can pretend that this is about coyotes, but no. Children didn't get they're not having trouble reuniting kids with coyotes. They're having trouble reuniting 545 kids with their parents. Then Trump says he pivots to the fact that, okay, well, we might have lost those kids, but hey, the facilities were so clean. Well, I guess that compensates for losing your parents. You had a clean toilet bowl. I mean, come on. That's what you point to? You've separated, you've rendered homeless 545 children. This is the pro-life party, by the way, the party that the QAnon, we want to protect the kids. And now you render 545 of them homeless. You separate them from their parents. They don't know, their families are ripped apart forever. And your justification for that is, well, the facilities are clean. Okay, well, I guess that's a small price to pay for losing your mom and dad, is that hey, maybe your cot doesn't have bed bugs. Congratulations. Would you guys make that trade? Then Trump goes on this thing about how catch and release during the Obama administration, how nobody would come back. That's an outright lie. The fact is that over 90% of people who were released came back for their hearings. There were certain programs that had that percentage at nearly 98% of people who were coming back for their hearings. So when Trump ended this program, I mean, this is what he likes to do. He likes to pretend that murderers and rapists were just pouring into the country, and we were saying, okay, oh, you murdered somebody, have a good time, enjoy the United States. But that wasn't happening. First of all, they weren't releasing any dangerous or violent criminals into the country. These were people that don't have any records. And the fact is that the vast majority, between 90 and 98% of people were coming back for their hearings. So this is just an outright lie. Also, I don't know if you noticed, but at the end of that section, Biden says, Trump says, oh, we have a great policy with regard to, the whole child separation thing. And we know exactly what we're doing. And Biden says, yeah, and now we have 545 kids lost. And the last thing that Trump says there was good. And that should kind of tell you everything you need to know about Donald Trump's stance on the child separation policy. He says good. Moving over to race, this is a line that we heard multiple times throughout this thing. Nobody has done what I've done for the black community. That's Donald Trump. That's who Biden called Abraham Lincoln over there. Just bragging about how great he's been, the greatest president that there ever was for the black community. Forget about the fact that there have been a vastly disproportionate number of deaths from coronavirus have been people of color, have been, minorities and black and brown people from this pandemic that Donald Trump himself failed to contain. That is not good for the black community if you unleash a virus onto the country, fail to contain it, and then that virus has a disproportionate impact on people of color. That's not good for that. That's not the, that's one of the worst things that happened in American history to black people. And you're sitting there claiming that you've been the best president we've ever had for black people. What about the fact that he's emboldened white nationalists? He couldn't even bring himself to condemn the Proud Boys, a hate group. Looking back to 2016, Donald Trump couldn't even bring himself to condemn David Duke, the leader of the KKK. This has been, a daily clinic, a daily kowtow to white nationalists, to white supremacist groups. That's what Donald Trump's been. How is that good for minorities in this country? Consider the fact, too, we've had a record uptick in hate crimes in this country during the Trump administration. What about the Central Park Five? After they were acquitted, Trump still says that he wanted the death penalty for them. Trump attacked black athletes. Colin Kaepernick and any athlete that for the cardinal sin of kneeling. He would attack black athletes for peaceful protest, the most peaceful protest that you could possibly have, kneeling quietly on a field, and then he did it. When it wasn't football players, it was basketball players. He's attacked, baseball players. No matter where they are, if you find people who at least stand up peacefully for the rights of people of color in this country, Donald Trump has been there, like white on rice to condemn them and attack them and make his thoughts perfectly well known. That has been a recurring theme in this administration since before he even took office. Then Trump, brings up this 1994 crime bill, and there was a drug provision in the crime bill, and Biden came out and says it was a mistake. That's it, and it's as simple as that. He was able to admit a mistake, and it was a mistake, and he was able to admit it. And that's good. And then guess what? It's over. But Donald Trump is, we've had 4 years of Trump can claim that water is actually made of fire and that dogs and cats don't exist. And then, if somebody called him out on it, he would pretend that he never, that he never said it. He wasn't wrong. There is nothing he can say that he won't, dig his heels in and pretend like he was absolutely correct. This every single day, this presidency is a clinic in showing that, okay, I'm pot committed to something. I'll be weak if I go back and pretend that I made a mistake. So I'm just gonna pretend I didn't say it or whatever it is. All Biden had to do, he showed, this is what humility looks like. If somebody makes a mistake, you say, I made a mistake. This 1994 crime bill was a mistake, and then it's done. And that's what leadership is. You're not strong to pretend that when you say Yosemite, that's what you meant. When Trump screwed up Yosemite and Yosemite, that doesn't make him strong. It makes him an idiot. It makes him look like a clown. And the entire world can see it. You pretending. It's political theater. That's all it is. And then the last section that we have is climate. And before I get into this last section, because we're gonna finish up soon. I do want to ask, if you can, please subscribe to this channel. I put a lot of work into, making these videos 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. People that are already subscribed know that. So please, if you haven't yet subscribed, just subscribe to this channel. I don't ask for money or anything like that. It's just, just looking for subscribers. I'm pretty close to 1 million. So that's my goal here. So thanks. I appreciate it. Okay. Jumping over to climate. Trump says that we have the best numbers with regard to emissions. I want the cleanest air and water. The fact is that this administration rolled back 100 Obama-era regulations. 100 Obama-era regulations. So during, it's one thing that during the climate change portion of this debate, he can pretend that he's been this champion for climate change. But just look at the reality of the situation. That there's been no progress, no forward progress on climate change legislation during this time in office. And it's not like, oh, well, we can just wait for the next one. This is, anybody that's listened to any scientists on this issue know that this is the pivotal time. This is the crucial time. If not now, there won't be a chance to take action on climate change. This is an existential crisis. We are warming this planet at an exponentially increasing rate. This is the highest rate in history. Action needed to have been taken 4 years ago, 10 years ago, back when Al Gore was saying it. And the fact is that Trump hasn't made any forward progress. He can pretend that he likes clean water. God knows that the only clean water he's seen is what comes out of his faucet or toilet that he has to flush 15 times to get it there. But with regard to clean air and clean water, all he's done is roll back regulations that would have strengthened our environmental progress in this country. He's engaged in a lawsuit against the state of California for trying to, tighten emission standards. Who doesn't want their car to get better gas mileage? Who is out there saying, no, I want my car to have shittier gas mileage. I only want 8 miles to a gallon. That's what I want. Like, nobody is out there. Everybody wants their car to get better gas mileage. That's what California did. California is the biggest marketplace for cars. So when California sets its own rules, the automakers basically have to listen to California if they want to be able to sell here. So California sets the emissions standards in this country. And so Trump went to court to get them to not be able to do that, to basically be able to say, like, California didn't have the right to set their own emission standards, which is just wild. And it helps nobody. All it does is start a fight for the sake of starting a fight against a Democratic governor. That's it. It was a waste of political resources that benefits zero people. Trump goes on to say that Biden's climate plan is just knocking down buildings and rebuilding them with tiny little windows. I don't even know what I'm supposed to say. I don't even know what I'm supposed to say about that. Does Donald Trump think that Biden's climate plan is knocking down the buildings in this country and replacing them with tiny little? And that's a direct quote. That's not me paraphrasing. Biden wants to knock down buildings and rebuild them with tiny little windows. That is exactly what he said. And I mean, that goes to show right there that this isn't somebody who's serious. This isn't somebody who should be taken seriously. It goes to show, this narrow little, again, Fox News bubble that he's living in, where they say these outlandish things, and while Sean Hannity will be like, oh yeah, we don't want that, we don't want them to knock down buildings and replace them with different buildings with tiny little windows, the rest of us are like, what are you talking about, man? Nobody within their right mind would believe that. And the fact that that he can say these things out loud goes to show that he's been surrounded by yes men and sycophants who kowtow to him so long without being challenged, that these are the things he thinks he can say at a nationally televised debate, and that it'll actually help him, when in reality it makes him sound like a clown. Trump says that Biden's climate plan will cost $100 trillion. I mean, no, Biden's climate plan, he's already come out and said, will cost $2 trillion. They've scored it. They've scored it. And economists have already come out and scored that plan. It's done, and it's paid for in full by a tax hike on the wealthy, which is one of the top polling issues in this country right now. Who doesn't want the wealthiest people to pay their fair share? The top 1%, people making over $400,000 a year. Who is lining up behind millionaires and saying, like, oh, we got to protect those people? Are the millionaires okay? No, nobody. I mean, this is one of, if not the highest polling issue we have in this race right now, which is raising taxes on the wealthy. And that's what will pay for Biden's climate plan. A climate plan that costs $2 trillion. And all Trump can say about it is, no, it's not going to cost $2 trillion. It's going to cost $100 trillion. I mean, it just goes to show, again, the things that he thinks he can say with a straight face on Fox News, how ridiculous they sound when regular people watch them. Biden does point out one of the smartest things. He points out that the fastest growing sectors are wind and solar. And meanwhile, you have Trump, who thinks that windmills cause cancer. He thinks that windmills are going to be there killing all the birds. Trump oohs when Biden says that, yeah, he does want to transition away from oil. And and Trump goes like, ooh, oh, we got him. And he literally says, and I wrote this direct quote down, he goes, will you remember that, Texas? Will you remember that, Pennsylvania? The fact is that Texas and Pennsylvania, first of all, Texas is already transitioning to renewables. They've been smart about that. They see that the future is not oil. And all that Trump's done by kowtowing to coal and fossil fuels, and the people who've, like Cole Murray, who've donated to his re-election campaign, is ceded the opportunity for leadership in the growing sector of renewables to other countries, to China. Who do you think makes the most solar panels now? You think the United States does? No, it's China. Why? Because we're stuck in this bullshit pretending that coal is still the future. We've had more coal plants. Trump said he was going to save coal in this country. More coal plants have closed in Trump's office during Trump's time in office. He hasn't saved coal. All he's done is delayed the inevitable, continued cashing checks from the coal magnates who've been donating to his campaign, and most importantly, he's deprived the American people, especially in places like Appalachia, in Pennsylvania, in Texas, places that are historically red states. He's deprived them of the ability to have leadership in the fastest growing sector of the world economy. Imagine how much better of a position we'd be in if instead of bullshitting about coal and fossil fuels and pretending like coal is the future, if he actually just took steps to make the United States a world leader in the fastest growing sector. You want to talk about jobs? All we've done is shed jobs in the fossil fuel industry. Shed jobs. Meanwhile, the fastest growing sector is renewables. He missed that. He ceded that boat to other countries. So no, this has been an absolute abdication of his responsibilities, both in terms of the climate and in terms of the economy as well. So yeah. Overall, I think I think Biden absolutely did his job. He showed that he was a perfectly competent leader. He showed that he was, that he acknowledged what the American people were going through right now. And that's the biggest difference. You have one candidate who can actually acknowledge what the American people are dealing with in the midst of this pandemic, in the midst of this economic crisis, in the midst of this, jobs crisis. And then you have Trump, and the fact that all he wanted to talk about was Hunter Biden, was business deals in China, was Burisma, was the Ukraine. I mean, it goes to show that only one person up there on that stage tonight, is able to actually empathize with the American people. And I think that's something that, as you make your way out to the polls over the next 2 weeks, as you cast your ballots over the next 2 weeks, that's something that you should keep top of mind. So with that said, again, if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe button. I really appreciate you guys sticking around for this live stream. If you have your ballot right now, make sure to get it in as soon as possible. I work with Vote Save America, so check out votesaveamerica.com/ballot. It is the best resource I know. It will tell you exactly where you can safely vote or drop off your ballot. Official drop boxes. Don't fall for any of the Republican, filing cabinets with a sign on it. Use Vote Save America, use their ballot tool, and it'll tell you exactly where you can safely drop it off. I looked mine up yesterday. I'm going tomorrow to drop off my ballot. Also, if you live in a state with early voting, make sure you go and vote as soon as possible. Republicans are still in court trying to litigate away your right to vote. They're still trying to suppress your right to vote up until the last second. So get in early, get in line, make sure you're able to safely wait to vote. If you're not able to bring a ballot to a drop box, if you haven't mailed in your ballot already, make sure you're able to, as quickly as humanly possible, go and vote and, just end this nightmare and, let Trump give him free reign to go start whatever, news network he's going to start so he can appeal to the Proud Boys and QAnon and whatever other, other crazies he has in the deepest, darkest depths of Fox News. So with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Please subscribe to my channel, and we'll catch you tomorrow for some regular videos. Thanks so much.